Elspeth Wycliffe knew the Kestrelmere Sapphire was false before she came within 6 feet of the glass. The certainty struck so quickly that she stopped in the middle of the picture gallery, forcing Lady Doring to halt beside her while silk skirts whispered around them and a string quartet played somewhere beyond the open doors. It was April of 1864, and Kestrelmere House had gathered half of fashionable London beneath its gilded ceilings to admire a jewel that had supposedly returned from private safekeeping abroad. Candlelight trembled across the crystal case. Inside lay a square blue stone held by gold branches, seed pearls, and a silver falcon. Guests leaned toward it with reverence. Elspeth saw only the lie. The backward pomegranate leaf was on the right side of the mount. It belonged on the left. The falcon's lower wing curved with perfect symmetry, though the genuine pendant had never been perfect, after a lost seed pearl forced her father to replace it with one slightly larger than the others. Even the gold was wrong. Its darkness lay evenly in the recesses, like paint applied by a patient hand, while true age gathered where fingers, cloth, and repairs had earned it. "You've gone pale," Lady Doring murmured. Elspeth kept her hands folded over the reticule at her waist. Inside it, wrapped in her father's worn chamois cloth, rested the small brass tracing plate she had carried for 11 years. "I'm well. You are not looking at the room as though you're well. I'm looking at the pendant." Lady Doring followed her gaze. "It is handsome. It is false." The words left Elspeth softly. They should have vanished beneath the music and conversation. Instead, a gentleman near the display turned his head. Then a lady in ivory satin stopped speaking. Silence did not fall all at once. It spread outward in widening circles until even the nearest violin seemed too loud. Elspeth felt every eye arrive upon her. Across the gallery, Lady Arabella Fenwick stood beside the crystal case, elegant in deep violet silk, one gloved hand resting near the brass key. She had managed Kestrelmere House for years after the late Duchess died, and carried herself with the authority of a woman accustomed to arranging both rooms and reputations. "Did I hear correctly?" she asked. Lady Doring's grip tightened on Elspeth's arm. "Miss Wycliffe spoke privately. Private statements are rarely made in a public gallery." Lady Arabella's gaze moved over Elspeth's plain grey gown, her unadorned throat, and the modest reticule at her waist. Perhaps Miss Wycliffe would care to explain why she is called a ducal heirloom false. Elspeth could have apologized. Society would have praised her prudence and remembered her insolence. She could have blamed poor light. Society would have smiled and repeated her words by breakfast. Instead, she looked again at the pendant, because the genuine mount was not made as this one is. A murmur moved through the room. Lady Arabella's expression sharpened. And how would a paid companion know the construction of a jewel that has been in the Kestrelmere family for generations? My father repaired it. The name had not yet been spoken, but recognition already appeared on several faces. Elspeth saw it in the quick lowering of eyes and the little tightening of mouths. William Wycliffe, restorer, jeweller, the man accused of substituting Sir Claudius Mercer's emerald, and spared formal prosecution only because his reputation had been destroyed more efficiently, without a trial. Lady Arabella smiled with controlled regret. "Your father's honesty was disputed. His knowledge was not." The smile vanished. "You presume a great deal on the patience of this house." "I have presumed nothing. I have not touched the case." The observation came from the far end of the gallery. A man stepped away from a cluster of peers near the tall windows, and the room shifted around him. before he spoke again. Frederick Wrentham, Duke of Kestrelmere, wore evening black without ornament beyond a white cravat and the silver watch chain at his waist. He was not the oldest man present, nor the loudest, yet the guests parted, as though rank were a current moving through the room. His expression revealed no embarrassment and no haste to defend the jewel. His attention rested first on Elspeth's hands, still folded above her reticule, then on the untouched crystal case. "Miss Wycliffe has not approached the display," he said. Lady Arabella turned toward him. "Frederick, surely you don't intend to indulge this. I intend to understand it." He stopped several feet from Elspeth. "You said the genuine mount was not made this way." "Yes, Your Grace." "When did you see it?" 11 years ago, on my father's work table." "You are certain it was this family's pendant?" "The commission was not named aloud in my presence, but the falcon, the pomegranate, leaves, and the square sapphire made its identity difficult to mistake." "You were a child, old enough to sort seed pearls and copy repair marks." Lady Arabella gave a quiet laugh. "Memory is generous to the children of disgraced men." Elspeth felt the cruelty land exactly where it had been aimed. She also felt Lady Doring's steady presence beside her. "Memory can be mistaken," Elspeth said. "Metal is less forgiving." The Duke's gaze changed. "Not warmth, not belief, attention. What is wrong with the metal?" "The backward pomegranate leaf has been placed on the right. On the genuine mount, it was on the left. The falcon's lower wing should be slightly uneven because my father replaced a missing pearl with one of a larger size. This wing is balanced. The color in the recesses is artificial. It imitates age without showing wear." One of the gentlemen near the case bent closer. Lady Arabella lifted her hand. "No one touches it." "Agreed," the Duke said. He looked toward the steward standing near the gallery doors. "Mr. Bellamy, close the room. No guest leaves until the persons who handled the pendant since its arrival are named." The steward hesitated only a fraction. "At once, Your Grace." The gallery doors closed. The quartet stopped. What had begun as an exhibition now carried the stillness of an inquiry. Lady Arabella lowered her voice. "You cannot allow an accusation built on a tradesman's daughter's recollection to disgrace this family before its guests." "The accusation has already been made," Frederick replied. "What matters now is whether it can be tested fairly." He moved to the display table. The small brass key lay near Lady Arabella's hand. He picked it up, then placed it in the center of the green baize surface, where every witness could see it. "No one opens the case yet." He turned to Elspeth. "You said metal is less forgiving than memory. Tell us what should be found on the reverse of the genuine pendant before anyone examines this one." Elspeth heard a woman near the wall whisper that the Duke was setting a trap. Perhaps he was. If her memory failed, she would fail publicly and completely. If she refused, society would say she had thrown mud at a great house and fled before proof. Frederick did not soften the choice. He did not offer rescue. He offered procedure. That was rarer. Elspeth drew one measured breath. Beneath the lower hinge, there should be a dark crescent in the gold where my father stabilized a crack. Under the sapphire setting, there should be 3 shallow tool marks. The first is straight, the second curves inward. The third ends abruptly because his graver slipped when the mount shifted. A few guests exchanged glances at the precision of it. Frederick did not look away. And the third sign, a patch of green enamel beneath the falcon's left claw. It is small enough to be missed unless the light strikes from the side. Could those details appear in a public inventory? Not one I have seen. They are workshop marks. not display descriptions. Lady Arabella's voice cooled. Or details invented now because no one can disprove them until the case is opened. That is why I have stated them first. Elspeth kept her eyes on the Duke. If they are absent, the pendant is not the one my father repaired. If they are present, I will withdraw the accusation. Frederick glanced toward Lord Tukes, a silver-haired peer standing nearest the table. You will witness the opening. Gladly. Lady Doring will remain beside Miss Wycliffe. Lady Doring inclined her head. I had no intention of leaving her. Frederick looked once more at the crystal case. Mr. Bellamy will bring leather-tipped tongs. No bare hand will touch the pendant. Before that happens, every person in this room will remember that Miss Wycliffe identified the flaw before approaching the glass and named the hidden marks before the reverse was seen. His words did not declare Elspeth right. They made it harder for anyone to rewrite what had happened. For the first time since her father's name had become a warning, whispered across counters and drawing rooms, a powerful man had not asked her to be grateful for being heard. He had made hearing her part of the record. Bellamy left to fetch the instruments. Around the gallery, guests watched Elspeth as though she had become more dangerous than the jewel. Lady Arabella stood very still. Frederick remained beside the visible key. Elspeth looked through the crystal at the wrong-sided leaf, the perfect wing, and the false age pressed into the gold. Whoever had commissioned the copy had not merely imitated the Kestrelmere heirloom. They had copied the parts of William Wycliffe's knowledge that society remembered, then altered them just enough to point back toward his daughter. Mr. Bellamy returned, carrying a narrow mahogany tray lined with white velvet. Upon it lay leather-tipped tongs, a small folding lens, 2 clean squares of chamois, and a silver ruler. He crossed the gallery with the measured dignity of a steward accustomed to managing expensive objects before important people. But the tray trembled once when he placed it beside the crystal case. Elspeth noticed. So did the Duke. Frederick said nothing. Lord Tukes, he said instead, will you confirm that the key has remained in full view? The silver-haired peer stepped closer to the green baize table. It has not been touched since your grace placed it there. Lady Doring, I can confirms the same. Frederick looked at Elspeth. And you? Yes, your grace. Then we proceed. Lady Arabella remained on the opposite side of the display, one hand closed around the ivory handle of her fan. This has already gone too far. It has gone exactly as far as the accusation requires. Frederick replied, no farther. He handed the key to Lord Tukes, who inspected the teeth before returning it. Frederick unlocked the brass fitting himself. The click sounded small, yet every person in the gallery heard it. He lifted the crystal cover only high enough for Bellamy to reach inside. Use the tongs, he said. Do not turn the piece until Lord Tukes and Miss Wycliffe can both see the movement. Bellamy swallowed. Yes, your grace. The pendant rose from its velvet hollow. Candlelight moved across the square blue stone. From the front, it was handsome enough to persuade anyone who wanted persuasion. Bellamy placed it face down upon one of the clean chamois squares. Elspeth did not step forward until Frederick asked, Is this distance sufficient? She moved to the edge of the table with Lady Doring beside her and Lord Tukes on the other side. Yes. State the first mark again. A dark crescent beneath the lower hinge. Bellamy angled the lens. Lord Tukes bent closer. The gold beneath the hinge was smooth, evenly darkened, and unbroken. No repair line interrupted it. There is no crescent, Lord Tukes said. A breath passed through the room. Lady Arabella opened her fan. The mount may have been repaired again. Elspeth kept her eyes on the pendant. A later repair could strengthen the hinge. It could not erase a patch of added gold without recutting the entire joint. Then perhaps the repair was replaced. That would alter the hinge proportions. Elspeth pointed without touching. They have not been widened. This hinge was made smooth from the beginning. Frederick looked at Bellamy. The second mark. The steward shifted the lens beneath the sapphire setting. Elspeth described the expected scratches once more. Straight, curved inward, abruptly ended. The white light reflected from metal that bore only regular finishing lines. No graver slip, no uneven hand pressure. Nothing human remained there. Absent, Lord Tuke said. This time the murmur was louder. Elspeth felt no triumph. Each missing mark confirmed that she had been right, yet each also restored a room from her childhood with painful clarity. Her father bent over the original mount, his head lowered beneath the lamp, a graver skidding, a quiet breath of annoyance. Then his voice telling her that honest work did not require perfection, only that its scars be understood. Frederick's gaze rested on her face for a moment. He did not ask whether she was distressed. He returned the room to the evidence. The enamel. Bellamy turned the pendant slightly. Beneath the falcon's left claw, the gold was bare. No green patch, no residue, not even a shallow recess where enamel might once have been set. Lord Tuke straightened. The third mark is also absent. Silence settled completely. Lady Arabella closed her fan. Then Miss Wycliffe has proved only that this pendant was not repaired by her father. That is what I claimed, Elspeth said. No, Lady Arabella replied. You called it false. Because the Kestrelmere heirloom my father repaired had those marks. This object does not. An heirloom can be remounted. Then it is not the same mount being presented as unchanged. Frederick's expression hardened by a degree. Was the pendant described to me as remounted? Lady Arabella hesitated. It was described as restored. By whom? Mr. Vane handled the arrangements. That does not answer the question. He assured me the family jewel was intact. Elspeth looked again at the pendant, the backward leaf, the balanced wing, the false aging, and now the empty reverse. This was not an imperfect restoration. It was an imitation built from selected knowledge. Your Grace, she said, may Mr. Bellamy examine the pearl at the lower edge of the falcon's wing? Frederick nodded. Bellamy adjusted the lens. What should he find? On the genuine piece, the replacement pearl was slightly larger and drilled off-center. My father chose it because the original hole had widened. This one is uniform with the others. Bellamy looked up. It is uniform. Lady Arabella's color changed almost imperceptibly. Frederick saw it. Record that as a fourth discrepancy, he ordered. Bellamy reached for the register on the side table, then stopped. The household register is in my office, Your Grace. Then a temporary record will be written now and entered later before witnesses. Frederick turned to a footman. Bring paper, ink, and sealing wax. The order was obeyed at once. He instructed Bellamy to return the pendant to the velvet hollow. The crystal cover was lowered and locked. The display key was placed inside a folded sheet, the edges sealed with red wax, and both Frederick and Lord Tukes signed across the flap. The pendant remains here, Frederick said. 2 footmen will stand outside the gallery. No person enters without my written order. The guard changes at dawn, and both names are entered in the household book. His gaze moved across the guests. You are free to leave once. Mr. Bellamy has recorded every person who handled or transported the object after its arrival. No one protested, society preferred to call itself inconvenienced rather than detained. Lady Arabella moved toward Frederick. "You are humiliating this house over the word of a woman whose father was publicly disgraced." Elspeth felt Lady Doring stiffen beside her. Frederick answered before either woman could speak. "I am protecting this house from the greater humiliation of defending an object we have not authenticated." "And protecting her?" Lady Arabella asked. His gaze shifted to Elspeth. "I am protecting the integrity of what she has already proved." The distinction struck Elspeth more deeply than reassurance would have. He did not declare her innocent because he favored her. He prevented others from moving the ground beneath her feet. Half an hour later, after the guests had begun leaving in restrained clusters, Frederick asked Lady Doring whether Elspeth might speak with him in the morning room. "With me present," Lady Doring said. "Naturally." The smaller room held no audience, only a coal fire, 3 armchairs and a writing table. Elspeth remained standing until Lady Doring sat. Frederick did not take the chair behind the desk. He stood near the fire, reducing neither the distance nor the difference in rank. "You said your father repaired the genuine mount," he began. "Do you possess any record beyond memory?" Elspeth rested one hand over her reticule. "Yes." Lady Doring glanced at her, surprised. Elspeth opened the clasp and withdrew the folded chamois cloth. The fabric had darkened where her father's fingers had repeatedly touched it. She laid it upon the table and unfolded it to reveal a small brass plate scratched with the reverse outline of a pendant. The falcon, pomegranate branches, hinge, claw, and stone seat appeared in fine incised lines. Near one edge stood the Roman numerals 17. Frederick took one step closer, then stopped. "May I?" The question was so simple that Elspeth almost failed to answer. Powerful men had searched her father's workshop, inventoried his tools, and taken objects without asking whether grief had ownership. "You may look," she said. "Please do not lift it." "I won't." He bent over the plate without touching it. "The left side leaf." "Yes. The larger pearl is marked here. My father used a deeper dot for replacements." Frederick studied the 3 scratches beneath the setting, and these correspond to the graver marks you named in the gallery. "They do. Why did he make this?" "He traced difficult commissions in case later repairs were needed. The plate remained hidden inside the lining of his instrument case when creditors took the workshop." Frederick's attention went to the numerals, 17. His commission number. Was the client's name recorded? "Not on the plate." She refolded the cloth only after he stepped back. "My father protected discretion, even when it did not protect him." Frederick's mouth tightened. Mr. Vane arranged the pendant's return to Kestrelmere House. The delivery record says he brought it from Antwerp yesterday afternoon. Elspeth looked up sharply. "Mr. Vane was in London." According to Lady Arabella, he arrived from Antwerp and delivered the jewel shortly before 4. "That cannot be true." "Why?" "Because Mr. Vane was the man who testified that my father removed Sir Claudius Mercer's emerald. He avoided our street afterward, but he remained in England for months. He did not travel without leaving agents behind. My father used to say Mr. Vane never trusted a foreign crossing when another man could make it for him." Frederick watched her carefully. "You believe he would not have gone to Antwerp himself. I believe he would have sent someone, but belief is not proof." "No." He crossed to the writing table and opened a narrow leather folder. "This is." He placed a receipt beside the folded chamois. It bore the stamp of a solicitor's office in Chancery Lane and Mr. Vane's signature, witnessed shortly after noon the previous day. Elspeth read the time twice. He could not have travelled from Antwerp and signed this in London before delivering the pendant at 4. He did not. Frederick's voice was quiet. Mr. Vane was in London all day. Lady Doring looked toward the closed door. Then, who brought the jewel to this house? Frederick folded the receipt. That is the first question. His gaze settled on Elspeth. The second is why Lady Arabella lied about where Mr. Vane had been. The handle of the morning room door moved before anyone outside knocked. It turned once, stopped against the latch, then turned again with greater care. Frederick crossed the room in 3 silent steps and opened it. Mr. Bellamy stood in the passage with one hand still lifted. His expression changed so quickly that Elspeth might have missed it, had she not spent half her life watching customers decide which truth they could afford. "Your Grace," the steward said, "I was coming to report that the last guests have gone." "Then why didn't you knock?" Frederick asked. "I believe the room empty. You watched Lady Doring and Miss Wycliffe enter with me." Bellamy looked toward Elspeth, then away. "I must be mistaken." "You have made several mistakes this evening." Frederick opened the door wider. "Bring the display register, the delivery receipt, and every letter concerning the pendant. Bring them yourself. No copyists, no servants." Bellamy's face remained properly composed. "At once, Your Grace, and Mr. Bellamy." The steward paused. "You'll touch nothing except the documents I have named." Bellamy bowed and withdrew. Frederick closed the door, but did not return to the fire. He was listening. Lady Doring spoke with the certainty of a woman who had survived too many drawing rooms to mistake accident for curiosity, or confirming whether we remained inside, Elspeth said. Frederick looked at her. Why would that distinction matter? A listener wants words. A man checking an empty room wants access. His gaze shifted to the writing table, then to the folded chamois cloth inside her reticule. Access to the plate, perhaps, or to the receipt proving Mr. Vane was in London. Lady Doring's mouth tightened. Then neither object should remain on that table. Elspeth had already refolded the tracing plate and returned it to her reticule. Frederick placed the Chancery Lane receipt inside his inner coat pocket. They won't. The calm efficiency of the movement steadied her, though she distrusted the relief it brought. She had learned early that powerful men could seem protective while facts served them, then become offended when truth demanded a price. Frederick had not yet paid one. He had only opened a case. "Tell me exactly what Mr. Vane said against your father," he said. Elspeth remained standing. Sitting would have made the recollection feel like a confession. Sir Claudius Mercer brought an emerald to our workshop for examination. My father had not accepted the commission. He believed the stone's colour had been altered by foil beneath the setting, and said he would not value it until the mount was opened. Was Mr. Vane present? Yes. He carried Sir Claudius's messages and stood beside the work table when the case arrived. She could still see the shallow silver tray, the square of black velvet, and the emerald glowing too brightly beneath the lamp. I entered with tea before my father touched the setting. The emerald was on the tray. Mr. Vane was looking directly at it. Yet he later testified that your father removed it. He said he returned, after I left and saw my father place the stone inside a drawer. Did the emerald disappear? Sir Claudius claimed it had been replaced by paste. No one permitted my father to inspect the alleged substitute. No criminal charge followed. There was no need. Collectors withdrew their commissions within a week. Lady Doring's eyes filled, but she did not interrupt. Elspeth was grateful. Sympathy could become another form of theft when it took a story away from the person who had endured it. "How long did your father live afterward?" Frederick asked. 14 months. A winter illness weakened him. Fever came in the spring. She kept her voice level. The scandal did not kill him in a manner a physician could write on a certificate. It removed the work that paid for warmth, food, and medicine. Frederick lowered his gaze for a moment. When he looked up, there was no easy assurance in his face, and you were never asked for your account. A jeweler's daughter, seeing an emerald on a tray, was called childish memory. An antiquities agent serving Sir Claudius Mercer was called a witness. The door opened after a proper knock. Bellamy entered carrying a leather-bound register, a folded receipt, and 3 packets of correspondence. Frederick directed him to place them on the writing table and stand back. "Who received the pendant yesterday?" he asked. "I did, Your Grace." "From whom?" "Mr. Vane." "At what time?" "Shortly before 4. You saw him personally." Bellamy's eyes flickered. "I saw the gentleman who delivered the case." "That wasn't my question." He gave Mr. Vane's name. "Did you recognize Mr. Vane?" "Not well enough to swear to him." Lady Doring made a small sound of disbelief. Frederick ignored it. "Open the register to the entry." Bellamy did so. The line read, "Received from Mr. Vane, 4 o'clock, Kestrelmere Sapphire in sealed Morocco case." Beneath it stood Bellamy's signature and Lady Arabella's initials. Frederick placed the Chancery Lane receipt beside the page. "Mr. Vane signed this in London shortly after noon. That does not prevent him from reaching this house by 4. "It does prevent the Antwerp journey Lady Arabella described." Bellamy's face did not change. "I can't answer for Lady Arabella's wording." Elspeth leaned toward the register without touching it. The ink in Mr. Vane's name was darker than the remainder of the sentence. More important, the paper beneath it lacked the soft tooth visible along the rest of the line. Fibers had been flattened, lifted, then pressed again. "Your Grace, may the lamp be moved closer?" Frederick did it himself. Light crossed the page at an angle. A shallow abrasion appeared beneath the written name. "The entry was altered," Elspeth said. Bellamy's breath shortened. "It's an old register. The paper's often marked, not beneath one name alone." She pointed to the first letter. Someone scraped away the original ink, smoothed the fibers, and wrote Mr. Vane over it. "The new hand is firmer because the damaged surface resisted the nib." Frederick looked at Bellamy. "Who wrote the original entry?" "I don't remember. The delivery occurred yesterday. There were 40 arrangements for the exhibition. I can't recall every line. You signed beneath it." "I sign household records every day." Frederick's stillness became more severe than anger. "You will surrender your keys." Bellamy stared at him. "Your Grace, your household keys now." "I've served Kestrelmere for 22 years. Then you understand the order." Bellamy drew a heavy ring from inside his coat. As he did, a folded paper slipped from the narrow pocket beside it and fell onto the carpet. He moved to retrieve it. Frederick reached it first. The paper bore the red-printed heading of a London creditor and demanded settlement of £180 within 7 days. Bellamy's face lost colour. "That is private." "Your debt is private," Frederick said. "Its connection to altered household records may not be." "There isn't any connection. Then the evidence will support you." He placed the demand beside the register and examined the key ring. Most of the keys were blackened iron, worn smooth through use. One smaller key had a freshly filed edge that gleamed pale in the lamplight. "What does this open?" Bellamy did not answer. Frederick held it up. "Mr. Bellamy, an archive cabinet." "Which cabinet?" The late Duke's private papers. Lady Doring straightened. Why does the steward carry a key to private ducal papers? The original was misplaced. Lady Arabella instructed me to have another cut. Frederick's eyes hardened. When? Last month. Before or after the present exhibition was planned? Bellamy hesitated. After. Elspeth looked again at the scraped entry. Beneath the dark initial M of Mr. Vane, the damaged paper retained two faint diagonal strokes. They might once have formed an A. They might as easily have belonged to a V or the first half of an N. The mark accused no one yet. Its uncertainty mattered. The original name can't be recovered by looking alone, she said, but the entry should be protected before anyone attempts chemical treatment or further scraping. Frederick nodded. Mr. Bellamy, you will remain in your rooms tonight. 2 footmen will stand outside. This is a household order, not an arrest. You will send no message and receive no visitor without my permission. Bellamy's composure cracked. You can't believe the word of a tradesman's daughter over 22 years of service. Frederick's reply came without raised voice. I believe the paper was scraped. I believe you described a man you could not identify. I believe you carried a newly filed key into an archive you had no independent right to enter. Miss Wycliffe did not create any of those facts. Bellamy looked at Elspeth with something colder than contempt, fear. Then he bowed and left between 2 summoned footmen. Frederick gathered the altered register, creditor's demand, receipt, and correspondence into separate wrappers. He wrote the time across each fold and asked Lady Doring and Elspeth to sign beside his name. Only after the seals hardened did he take up the small filed key. The private cabinet will be opened at 7:30 tomorrow morning, he said. Mr. Pembroke will attend as solicitor. Lord Tukes will witness. Nothing will be removed until every bundle is listed. Elspeth rested her hand over the reticule at her waist. And Lady Arabella? She will be informed that the archive is being examined. She won't be told which key opened it. He looked at the closed door through which Bellamy had gone. If the pendant was made to implicate your father, the plan required more than a copyist. It required access to family records. Frederick closed his fingers around the filed key. Tomorrow we discover what someone feared enough to lock inside my father's cabinet. By 9 o'clock the next morning, London had begun to repeat Elspeth's name without troubling to repeat what she had proved. 3 calling cards waited on Lady Doring's silver tray, each bearing a message of concern that smelled more strongly of curiosity. One lady hoped the unpleasantness had not distressed Miss Wycliffe. Another asked whether the Duke truly had confined his steward. The third offered no written question at all, only a penciled line beneath the engraved name. Is it true she accused the whole house? Elspeth read none of them twice. She sat beside the drawing-room window in a dark grey morning gown, her father's tracing plate secure inside the reticule at her waist. Lady Doring watched her over the rim of a teacup. You have not eaten. I have. Half a slice of toast is not breakfast. It was sufficient. So was your reply to Lady Sowerby, yet I suspect she will still require another. Elspeth almost smiled. Before she could answer, the footman announced the Duke of Kestrelmere and Mr. Silas Pembroke. Frederick entered first, dressed for the morning in a dark coat with no sign that he had slept little, though the faint shadow beneath his eyes suggested otherwise. Mr. Pembroke followed, carrying a locked dispatch case. He was a narrow, silver-haired solicitor with a face made for withholding opinions until they became useful. Frederick bowed to Lady Doring, then to Elspeth. His gaze paused briefly at the reticule. He did not ask whether the plate remained there. The restraint told her he remembered. The cabinet was opened at 7:30, he said, after Lady Doring invited them to sit. Lord Tukes witnessed every bundle removed. Mr. Pembroke prepared the inventory. Did the filed key work? Elspeth asked. At once. Frederick's mouth hardened. The lock showed no damage. Whoever had the new key cut intended quiet access. Mr. Pembroke placed the dispatch case on a low table but kept the key in his hand. The cabinet contained correspondence, disbursement books, and private inventories from the late Duke's administration. Several bundles had been returned out of order. Something was removed, Elspeth said. We believe so, he replied. The jewel inventory covering 1849 through 1855 is missing. Lady Doring set down her cup. The exact years one would wish to inspect. Precisely. Mr. Pembroke unlocked the dispatch case and removed a red leather ledger. He placed it on a clean blotting sheet. This was not filed with the jewel records. It was hidden among payments for domestic metalwork. Frederick opened the ledger to a marked page, but did not turn it toward Elspeth until Mr. Pembroke nodded. The entry was small, almost lost between payments for chimney fittings and replacement hinges. Paid to W. Wycliffe for stabilization of antique pendant mount, 12 guineas. Beside it stood the Roman numerals 17. Beneath the line, written in a finer hand, were the words private instruction. A.F. Elspeth felt the room narrow around the letters. Her hand moved instinctively toward the reticule, then stopped. May I compare the plate without placing it on the ledger? Yes, Mr. Pembroke said. Keep it in your possession. She opened the reticule and unfolded the worn chamois cloth upon her lap. The brass plate remained where it had slept for 11 years, its scratched numerals visible near one corner. 17, the same commission number. Frederick leaned forward, but he did not cross the space between them. That proves your father was paid by this house, he said. It proves he completed Commission 17 for an antique pendant mount, Elspeth corrected. It does not yet prove the mount was the Kestrelmere heirloom. Mr. Pembroke's brows lifted slightly. You resist conclusions that favor you. Conclusions are not less dangerous because they are comforting. Frederick looked at her with that same grave attention he had shown in the gallery. What would connect the payment to the Sapphire? The missing inventory might. A receipt might. A repair instruction describing the falcon or the pomegranate leaves. Her gaze returned to the notation. Or the person represented by A. F. Lady Doring said, Lady Arabella Fenwick. Perhaps, Elspeth replied. Initials are not proof of authorship. Frederick rested one hand against the arm of his chair. She was my father's first cousin, and often handled household matters after my mother died. She could have authorized the payment. Then she may also know why it was hidden among domestic metalwork. Mr. Pembroke removed a second packet from the dispatch case. There is another item. He opened the outer fold and revealed a small fragment of green sealing wax. A bird's wing curved across one edge. Below it remained the upper stroke of a letter. This was caught beneath the archive drawer, he said. Elspeth studied it without touching. Sir Claudius Mercer used green wax. Are you certain? Frederick asked. He used it on every note sent to my father. His device was a merlin above the letter M. Could the seal have been copied? Easily enough by a man who had access to an impression. Mr. Pembroke gave the smallest nod of approval. Then we treat it as a connection, not a conclusion. He folded the wax back into its packet. There was also an empty space in the receipt bundle. The thread remains, but one folded document has been removed. Frederick took out a letter written in a firmer, older hand. Mrs. Agnes Rook answered my summons. She was housekeeper here during my father's lifetime. He passed the letter first to Lady Doring, preserving the propriety of the room. Then Lady Doring handed it to Elspeth. Mrs. Rook remembered the night in question. Lady Arabella had entered the late Duke's study after midnight, carrying a blue morocco case. She had left through the servants' passage less than an hour later without it. Before dawn, Mrs. Rook had seen the same case returned to the house. She would say no more in writing. She would come to London only if received in person. "Where is she now?" Elspeth asked. "On the road from Richmond," Frederick replied. "She should reach Kestrelmere House shortly after 2. "And Bellamy?" Lady Doring asked. "Still in his rooms. He claimed illness this morning. The physician found no fever." "Does Lady Arabella know Mrs. Rook is coming?" Elspeth asked. "She knows I sent for the former housekeeper. She doesn't know what Mrs. Rook wrote." Frederick's answer carried no satisfaction. He was not enjoying secrecy. He was using it because the household itself could no longer be trusted. "The interview will take place in the West Library," he continued. "Lady Doring, I ask that you accompany Miss Wycliffe. Mr. Pembroke will attend. No one else enters without consent." Elspeth refolded the tracing plate inside the chamois cloth and returned it to her reticule. "The original ledger should not travel with us." Mr. Pembroke looked at her. "Why?" "Because the case involves a missing inventory, an altered register, and a steward with an unauthorized archive key. Carrying every original back into the same house places all the proof within one vulnerable building." Frederick considered her words, then turned to his solicitor. "The ledger remains with you. I'll secure it at my office. 2 copies of the entry can accompany us." "The wax fragment as well," Elspeth said, "and Mrs. Rook should not be shown any copy until after she gives her account." Mr. Pembroke closed the dispatch case. "Agreed." Frederick's gaze met Elspeth's. "You are directing this inquiry more effectively than several men paid to advise me. I'm trying to prevent anyone from saying later that evidence appeared because I needed it, including me, especially you." A brief silence followed. Lady Doring looked down at her tea, though the cup had been empty for several minutes. Frederick did not take offense. "Then I'll make certain my name cannot substitute for proof." Before Elspeth could answer, hurried footsteps sounded in the passage. The footman entered, carrying a blue morocco case on a silver salver. Its corners were worn pale. The brass clasp had darkened with age. "Your Grace," he said, "a Kestrelmere messenger has brought this from the house. The current housekeeper says it was found on the front steps less than half an hour ago." Frederick rose, but he did not touch it. "Who handled it?" The messenger lifted it from the step after a crossing sweeper pointed it out. "He carried it straight here." "Is the messenger still below?" "Yes, Your Grace. Keep him there. Give him food, and let no one question him twice." Mr. Pembroke placed a clean sheet of paper on the table. Only then did the footman lower the salver. The case was not locked. Frederick looked at Elspeth. "May I open it?" The question carried no command. "Not until Mr. Pembroke records its condition," she said. The solicitor noted the worn corners, the unbroken clasp, and a faint dark mark beneath it. Then Frederick lifted the lid. The velvet hollow inside was empty. Upon it lay a narrow strip of paper bearing 2 words in block letters. "Ask Wycliffe." Elspeth stared at the replaced lining, the newer stitches along one edge, and the shape pressed into the velvet where a pendant had once rested. Someone had not merely recovered an old case. Someone had chosen this morning this house and her father's name. Frederick's voice was low. Mrs. Rook is coming to tell us what left Kestrelmere House before dawn 11 years ago. Elspeth looked at the empty hollow. And whoever placed this on your steps is afraid she will remember. By 2 o'clock, the blue Morocco case had crossed London under stricter protection than the jewel it had once carried. Mr. Pembroke lifted the note, reading Ask Wycliffe with clean paper, sealed it in a separate envelope, and signed across the flap with Frederick, Lady Doring, and Elspeth as witnesses. The original red ledger and the green Mercer wax fragment were sent in the solicitor's locked dispatch case to his office. Only 2 certified copies of the ledger entry travelled onward. Frederick placed the empty blue case inside a padded travelling box and kept it in his own carriage. Elspeth and Lady Doring followed in another, preserving both propriety and the separation of evidence. When they reached Kestrelmere House, 2 footmen still guarded the gallery. The sealed display key remained in Frederick's possession. Bellamy remained in his rooms under household supervision, and no message had been permitted to leave him. The West Library had been prepared without ceremony. The blue case sat closed on the centre table, its clasp unfastened but untouched since Mr. Pembroke recorded its condition. The copies of the 1853 ledger entry rested several feet away. No original archive document had returned to the house. Elspeth remained near Lady Doring, one hand over the reticule containing her father's tracing plate. She had been in many grand rooms where wealth seemed designed to make a poorer person feel temporary. The West Library did something worse. It preserved the appearance of permanence while every answer inside it had been altered, hidden, or removed. Frederick stood near the mantel. He had changed neither his coat nor his expression since morning. Mrs. Rook's carriage entered the square 10 minutes ago, he said. She has travelled from Richmond without stopping except to change horses. She is elderly, Lady Doring said. You will give her time to breathe before questioning her. She'll be given whatever she requires. The door opened after a knock. Mrs. Agnes Rook entered on the arm of a maid. She was a small woman in a black bonnet, with silver hair drawn tightly beneath it, and a back that age had bent without making submissive. Her eyes moved first to Frederick, then to the blue case. When she saw Elspeth, she stopped. William's girl. Elspeth's throat tightened. Few people had spoken of her father without lowering their voices or changing the subject. You remember me? You sat beneath his bench and sorted seed pearls by size. You'd put the flawed ones in your left pocket because you felt sorry for them. Elspeth had forgotten that. The memory returned whole. Her father pretending not to notice, the warmth of metal filings beneath her shoes. Her own childish belief that imperfect things required rescue. I was 9, she said. You were observant. Mrs. Rook's gaze lowered to the reticule. He taught you well then. Frederick offered her the nearest chair. Mrs. Rook, no one here will ask you to guess. Tell us only what you saw or carried yourself. She sat slowly. That is more fairness than we gave Mr. Wycliffe. Frederick accepted the rebuke. Then begin wherever the truth begins. Mrs. Rook looked at Lady Doring, then at Mr. Pembroke, who had arrived with the copies, but not the original ledger. You will write it? Every word, he said. You may correct the statement before signing. Her attention returned to the blue case. Lady Arabella took that case from the late Duke's study after midnight. I saw her because she used the servant's stair, and I was checking a leak near the lower passage. She told me to put on my cloak. Did she say why? Elspeth asked. Not then. She carried the case herself until we reached the side entrance. There, she gave it to me and an address in Clerkenwell, William Wycliffe's workshop. Frederick's hand tightened against the mantle. My father knew. Mrs. Rook looked at him with sorrow rather than fear. His Grace knew the stone was gone. Whether he knew she sent the mount out that night, I cannot swear. Gone where? Sir Claudius Mercer had it. The room seemed to contract around the name. Mr. Pembroke's pen paused only long enough to sharpen the question. How do you know? I heard the late Duke tell Lady Arabella that Mercer would hold the sapphire until the debt was settled. She said no debt justified stripping the family jewel. He told her the family name would survive an empty setting more easily than public ruin. Frederick lowered his eyes. What debt? Gaming losses, private loans. More than I ever knew in figures. Lady Doring's mouth hardened. So Lady Arabella discovered the theft. She discovered the empty mount, Mrs. Rook corrected. She believed the stone might be recovered if the setting were made safe before anyone noticed. She sent it to Mr. Wycliffe because he was discreet and because he had repaired old gold before. Elspeth heard her own voice from a distance. Did she tell him the sapphire had been removed? Mrs. Rook's face changed. No. The word entered the room without force and struck harder for it. She told me to say the stone had been taken out for cleaning. She feared he would refuse the work if he knew the truth. I arrived before dawn. Your father opened the case beneath his lamp. The mount was inside, but the sapphire seat was empty. Elspeth saw the workshop with painful clarity. William lifting the gold falcon beneath the same lamp where he had taught her to distinguish a natural inclusion from a flaw caused by cutting. His hands would have moved gently even then, especially then. What did he say? She asked. He asked who had removed the stone. I repeated what Lady Arabella told me. He did not believe it, but he did not shame me for carrying the lie. He examined the hinge and said the gold had cracked because someone forced the setting from the wrong angle. Elspeth's fingers closed around the reticule. The dark crescent repair, the 3 graver marks. The enamel patch beneath the claw. Her father had done his finest work on a wounded mount whose missing heart had already been traded away. How long did he keep it? 2 days. I returned before sunrise on the 3rd morning. He had wrapped the mount in his own chamois. He said the hinge would hold, but whoever reset the sapphire must not press against the upper claw. He also said there was dust under the left claw that did not belong to cleaning. Elspeth looked at Frederick. Stone dust. From removing the sapphire? He asked. Most likely. My father knew the stone had been taken before the mount reached him. Mrs. Rook nodded. He asked whether the late Duke knew. I told him I could not answer. That was true. I carried the case back and gave it to Lady Arabella at the servants' stair. Frederick's voice became rougher. What happened next? She took it into the late Duke's study. 3 weeks later, Sir Claudius Mercer arrived after dinner with Mr. Vane and another pendant in this same blue case. Mrs. Rook pointed toward the table. It resembled the Kestrelmere jewel from the front, but the sapphire setting was broader, the gold was heavier, the hinge had no dark repair beneath it. A first copy, Elspeth said. Yes, though I did not know that word was being used. The late Duke called it a temporary substitute until the real sapphire was restored. Was the central stone genuine? Mr. Pembroke asked. No. I heard Sir Claudius say foil would give the glass sufficient depth in candlelight. Lady Doring drew a quiet breath of disgust. Mrs. Rook continued. the duplicate was placed in the private cabinet. Lady Arabella wore it once at a small supper in 1854. The late Duke ordered her never to wear it again. He said imitation was safe only while no one examined it closely. Frederick turned away from the mantel and faced the room fully. "My family did this." Elspeth looked at him. Grief had stripped the authority from his voice. But grief could not be allowed to rename responsibility. "Your family began it," she said. "Other people chose to continue it." He met her gaze and did not retreat from the distinction. "Yes." Mr. Pembroke glanced toward the blue case. "When did the first duplicate disappear?" "I cannot give the date. After the late Duke died, the private cabinet was rearranged. The blue case vanished first. Later, the pendant was gone as well." "Did Bellamy have access?" Frederick asked. "Not then. Lady Arabella, the late Duke, Mr. Vane, and I had handled the cabinet keys at different times. Sir Claudius entered the study often enough that no servant questioned him." Elspeth studied the faded velvet visible beneath the unfastened lid. "And the pendant in the gallery." Mrs. Rook's eyes moved toward the closed library doors, as though she could see through them to the guarded case. "I had never seen it before last night." The truth settled into place with a new and more dangerous shape. The gallery pendant was not the old substitute returning after decades. Someone had commissioned a second counterfeit recently, using fragments of William's work, a reversed leaf, and a story designed to drag his daughter into the fraud. Mrs. Rook leaned toward the blue Morocco case. "There is one more thing." Frederick waited. "When I returned the repaired mount, Mr. Wycliffe placed something beneath the velvet tray before closing the lid." Elspeth's pulse changed. "What?" "A note Lady Arabella had sent with the case," he said, "an instruction that dangerous should remain with the object it governed." Mrs. Rook looked at the newer lining. "If someone replaced that velvet, they may have been trying to remove what your father preserved." Mr. Pembroke did not allow anyone to touch the blue Morocco case until he had cleared the center of the table and placed a fresh sheet of white paper beneath it. "Mrs. Rook," he said, "before we disturb the lining, can you identify this as the same case you carried to Mr. Wycliffe?" She leaned forward without placing her hands on the table. "The corners were less worn, but yes, there is an old burn beneath the clasp. Lady Arabella dropped sealing wax there the night before she gave it to me." Frederick lifted the case only after Mr. Pembroke asked him to angle it toward the light. A dark crescent, no wider than a fingernail, marred the leather beneath the brass fitting. Mrs. Rook nodded. "That is the mark." Elspeth studied the inside. The faded velvet had been replaced by material too smooth for the age of the case. Along the lower rim, tiny stitches caught the light in a color that appeared nearly black until the fabric shifted. Then violet emerged. "The lining is newer," she said, "and the silk thread is not original to the case." Mr. Pembroke took out a small magnifying lens. "Can you estimate when it was altered?" "Not exactly. The paste has browned at the edges, but remains pale beneath the fold. It was not done 11 years ago. It was done long enough ago to lose its fresh smell, but recently enough that the adhesive still has flexibility." Lady Doring looked toward Mrs. Rook. "Would the original velvet have lifted?" "There was a removable tray," Mrs. Rook replied. "Mr. Wycliffe put the note beneath it. This lining has no tray. Someone fixed it down." Frederick's expression hardened. "Then the case was not merely restored. It was searched, or prepared to appear searched," Elspeth said. He looked at her. "You think the person who returned it wanted us to find something?" "I think we should not assume failure," because the case arrived empty. Mr. Pembroke drew on clean cotton gloves and selected a narrow ivory paper knife from his dispatch case. I'll lift only the loosened edge. If resistance increases, I stop. Elspeth nodded. Begin at the lower left corner. The stitching there is uneven. Frederick stepped beside her, but not in front of her. Lady Doring remained at Elspeth's other side. Mrs. Rook watched from her chair, both hands clasped over the handle of her umbrella. Mr. Pembroke inserted the blade beneath the velvet and raised it a fraction. A faint crackle came from hardened paste. He stopped. There is a cavity. Can you see inside? Frederick asked. Not yet. Then don't widen it without recording the first opening, Elspeth said. Mr. Pembroke noted the time, the position of each witness, and the exact corner disturbed. Lady Doring and Frederick signed the entry. Only then did he lift the velvet another quarter-inch. 3 small pieces of brown paper lay beneath it, pressed flat by the lining. 2 appeared blank. The third carried a diagonal stroke of ink. Mr. Pembroke slid the marked fragment onto the white sheet without touching the others. Elspeth felt the room gather around the scrap. The handwriting was elegant, slanted, and old. Only part of one sentence remained. Should the stone be questioned, Wycliffe alone must answer. Mrs. Rook closed her eyes. That was in the note. You read it? Mr. Pembroke asked. No, Mr. Wycliffe opened it before me. He went very still, then asked whether the late Duke knew what Lady Arabella had written. I told him I did not know. He folded the paper and placed it beneath the tray. Frederick stared at the fragment. Lady Arabella wrote those words. Mrs. Rook opened her eyes. I saw her seal the note, but I did not see her write it. Elspeth kept her gaze on the ink. Then we cannot assign the hand yet. The meaning is clear enough, Lady Doring said. Someone wanted William blamed if the missing stone drew notice. Yes, Elspeth replied, but we still need to know whether Lady Arabella created the instruction, carried it for someone else, or preserved a warning she did not understand. Frederick's jaw tightened. She understood enough to hide the mount. Fear can make a person understand only the part that protects them. Elspeth looked at the words again. William alone must answer. Her father had known, before Sir Claudius's emerald ever reached his work table, that a great house had chosen him as the safest man to sacrifice. He had still repaired the mount carefully. He had still preserved the instruction with the object. He had still sent Mrs. Rook away without humiliating her for the lie she carried. The knowledge hurt more than anger, because it revealed the full shape of his dignity. Frederick noticed her hand tightening around the reticule, but did not ask her to surrender it or speak before she was ready. Instead, he said to Mr. Pembroke, "Seal the fragment separately." The solicitor lifted a single violet thread from the exposed seam with tweezers and placed it in a second folded paper. He left the 2 blank scraps where they lay. The thread and fragment will be sealed apart. The case itself must also be sealed before it leaves this room. And it does leave, Elspeth said. It should not remain inside Kestrelmere House overnight. Frederick looked at Mr. Pembroke. Your office, my strong cabinet. I'll transport it in the dispatch carriage with 1 clerk and a constable as witness. Do so. The solicitor lowered the velvet without pressing it back into the paste. He wrapped the case in clean muslin, placed it inside the padded travelling box, and sealed the box across both clasps. Frederick, Lady Doring, Mrs. Rook, and Elspeth signed the labels. The marked paper fragment went into one envelope. The violet thread went into another. Mr. Pembroke placed both inside his dispatch case and locked it. Nothing remained loose on the table except the certified ledger copies. The careful order should have brought relief. Instead, a knock sounded at the library door. The current housekeeper entered, carrying a damp newspaper folded beneath one arm. "Your Grace, this was delivered with the afternoon post. I thought you should see the society column." Frederick accepted it. The ink still smelled fresh. His eyes moved down the page, and the restraint in his face became something colder. "Read it," Elspeth said. "You don't need to hear this. That is not your decision." The words were calm, but they stopped him. He handed the newspaper to Lady Doring, who read aloud. The column described Elspeth as the daughter of a disgraced jeweller who had interrupted a ducal exhibition to revive an old grievance. It claimed Frederick had confined a trusted steward on unsupported accusation. It warned that any proof produced later might be the desperate manufacture of a woman seeking restoration through noble favour. Lady Doring lowered the page. "This was set in type last night." Mr. Pembroke looked at the edition mark. "Before the archive cabinet was opened, before Mrs. Rook arrived, before the blue case was found. Then someone sent the account while the guests were still leaving," Frederick said. "Bellamy, possibly," Elspeth replied, "or someone who knew he would be confined and wanted the public version established first." Frederick crossed to the writing desk. "I'll issue a statement tonight. The newspaper will print a correction in the morning." "No." He turned. "They have accused you of manufacturing evidence. And if the Duke of Kestrelmere immediately speaks for me, they will say I gained private influence before the proof was examined. Silence allows the lie to spread, only if silence is all we do." Elspeth looked from the newspaper to the sealed travelling box. "The writer expects me to defend myself publicly. That will show them which facts frighten me and which facts I possess. Instead, I withdraw from society's view." Lady Doring studied her. "You intend to appear frightened." "I intend to let them believe the attack succeeded." Frederick's eyes narrowed with interest rather than approval. "While the inquiry continues through Mr. Pembroke, yes, the evidence remains with neutral custodians. Mrs. Rook gives a signed statement. Mr. Bellamy remains separated from the household records. We learn who becomes careless when they believe I have been silenced." "And your name?" Frederick asked. "My name has survived worse than a newspaper column." The answer cost her more than she allowed the room to see. He seemed to understand that. "You should not have to endure this again." "No, but endurance is not the same as surrender." Mr. Pembroke closed his dispatch case. "Then no statement tonight. I'll take the case, fragment, thread, and copies to my office. Mrs. Rook's testimony will be transcribed and signed before she leaves." Frederick folded the newspaper once. The gallery remains sealed. Bellamy remains in his rooms. Lady Arabella is told only that the inquiry continues. Elspeth looked at the printed accusation against her, then at the sealed box containing the sentence meant to condemn her father. The same hand might not have written both, but the same method governed them. Make the weaker person appear desperate before the stronger person's lie is examined. Whoever planned this, she said, is not merely hiding the past. They are rehearsing society's answer before we reveal it. Frederick met her gaze. Then we stop answering on their terms. No, Elspeth said. We let them believe we already have. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, Lady Doring's drawing room had filled with women who had come to discuss coal and hoped instead to witness disgrace. The committee met on the second Thursday of each month to divide subscriptions among widows who could not afford fuel, and Lady Doring refused to cancel it merely because society had discovered a new cruelty to enjoy. Elspeth sat at the long table, with 6 household accounts before her, the newspaper accusation folded out of sight in a drawer, and her father's tracing plate still wrapped in chamois inside the reticule at her waist. Mr. Pembroke had already taken the blue morocco case, the paper fragment, the violet thread, and the signed copies of Mrs. Rookey's testimony to his office. The red ledger and Mercer wax fragment remained there as well. Nothing important had been left in Kestrelmere House except the guarded gallery copy, the sealed display key in Frederick's custody, and Mr. Bellamy in his rooms. Yet gossip required no object, no witness, and no chain of custody. It required only a room willing to repeat it. Lady Sowerby arrived last, carrying a cream envelope she held too carefully to be casual. She wore pale lilac and an expression of grave concern. "I do hope we're not expected to ignore what has been printed," she said, before removing her gloves. Lady Doring did not look up from the subscription ledger. "We are expected to decide whether Mrs. Avery receives 6 shillings for coal." "Of course. But reputation affects charitable confidence." One of the younger committee members glanced toward Elspeth, then quickly away. "Whose reputation?" Lady Doring asked. Lady Sowerby took her place. "The committee's." Elspeth turned a page in the account before her. Mrs. Avery had 3 children, a room above a cobbler's shop, and enough fuel for 2 more nights. The facts deserved more attention than Lady Sowerby's tone, but the room had already tilted towards scandal. "Lady Arabella asked me to place this before the committee," Lady Sowerby continued. She laid the cream envelope on the table. She felt it would be kinder to address the matter privately before further misunderstanding harmed Lady Doring's work. Lady Doring's eyes hardened. "Lady Arabella does not direct my committee." "No, but surely she may warn us." "Of what?" Lady Sowerby opened the envelope and withdrew a copied invoice. "Of evidence suggesting Miss Wycliffe commissioned an antique-style pendant 6 weeks ago." The paper seemed to silence even the coal fire. Lady Sowerby read the relevant lines aloud. £3 and 10 shillings for alterations to an old gold pendant. Reversal of 1 leaf, replacement seed pearls. Preparation of aged colour upon the mount. The customer named at the top was Miss Elspeth Wycliffe, care of Lady Doring's London address. One woman gasped. Another stared at Elspeth as though the quiet companion beside the account books had suddenly become capable of anything. Lady Sowerby placed the invoice where all could see it. "The original is said to remain with the tradesman." "Which tradesman?" Elspeth asked. "A jeweller near Hatton Garden." "His name?" "Mr. Pritchard." "There is no Mr. Pritchard named on the page." Lady Sowerby's mouth tightened. "The source wished to be discreet." "Then the source has asked us to trust a document whose maker will not sign it, and whose supposed holder will not be identified." "You deny ordering the work?" "Yes. The signature appears to be yours." Elspeth held out her hand. Lady Sowerby hesitated before passing the page across the table. The copy was skillful. Her name had been formed from a genuine model, likely a calling card. The address was correct. The date was the 3rd of March. The description borrowed details from the gallery, pendant closely enough to alarm any reader unfamiliar with trade language. "On the 3rd of March, I was in Bath with Lady Doring," Elspeth said. Lady Doring nodded. "For 12 days, we stayed with my sister." "A letter could have been sent from Bath," Lady Sowerby replied. "The invoice says the order was discussed in person." Elspeth turned the page toward the others. "It also calls the object an antique-style pendant. A competent English jeweller would identify the metal, setting, mount, period, or stone. That phrase was written for society, not for a workshop. Convenient criticism from someone raised in a workshop. Necessary criticism from someone who knows how one speaks. Elspeth pointed to the signature. My capital E begins with a downward stroke. This begins upward because the writer copied the shape from a calling card, but did not know how my hand reaches it. A committee member near the window leaned closer. Could that difference be caused by haste? It could. That is why it does not prove forgery alone. Elspeth placed the invoice flat. The bath date, the in-person wording, the trade language, and the copied signature must be examined together. Lady Sowerby gave a brittle smile. You came prepared to defend yourself. A woman accused in print before breakfast often does. The youngest committee member lowered her eyes to hide a flicker of admiration. The oldest, Mrs. Pelling, pushed back her chair. I cannot continue my subscription while such uncertainty surrounds Lady Doring's household. Lady Doring looked at her. Mrs. Avery's children have not forged an invoice. That is not the point. It is precisely the point. Elspeth turned to Mrs. Pelling. Your annual subscription is 2 guineas. The committee can replace it from the reserve for this month. If you choose to withdraw later, send the decision in writing. Mrs. Pelling flushed. You speak as though you govern the funds. No, I keep the accounts. The distinction matters. She drew the next paper toward her. Mrs. Avery requires 6 shillings. Mrs. Cole requires 4. Mrs. Benson can manage with 3 and a coal ticket. We should decide before the merchant closes. The room did not return to ease, but it returned to work. That was enough. One by one, the grants were approved. Lady Sowerby watched Elspeth with increasing unease, as though she had expected tears, flight, or gratitude for the opportunity to explain. Elspeth gave her arithmetic instead. When the last amount had been entered, the drawing-room door opened. The footman announced the Duke of Kestrelmere. Frederick entered with rain darkening the shoulders of his coat. His gaze found Elspeth first, then the forged invoice beneath her hand. Where did that come from? Lady Doring told him. He read the copy once. The anger in his face did not become spectacle. It became decision. You'll come to Kestrelmere House at once, he said to Elspeth. The committee went very still. Elspeth looked up. No. The single word startled him more than defiance in the gallery had. Someone has obtained your address and a sample of your hand. Your rooms may have been searched. Evidence may have been planted there. Then, my rooms should be examined with witnesses. They will be, after you are removed from danger. Removed where? To Kestrelmere House. Lady Sowerby's attention sharpened with almost indecent interest. Elspeth felt the social trap close around the proposal before Frederick recognized it. I will not leave Lady Doring's committee under your order and enter an unmarried gentleman's house at dusk, while society is accusing me of seeking noble favor. This is not about appearances. Appearances are the weapon being used against me. His jaw tightened. Your safety matters more than gossip. My safety does not give you ownership of my choices. The words struck the room hard enough that even Lady Sowerby looked away. Frederick took one step toward her, then stopped. Elspeth saw the moment authority rose in him, ready to solve the problem by force of rank. She also saw him refuse it. You're right, he said. The admission passed through the committee like another scandal. I should have asked. Elspeth's pulse remained unsteady. Yes. Will you permit 2 of my footmen to remain outside Lady Doring's house tonight? They won't enter unless summoned, she considered. Yes. Will you permit Mr. Pembroke to examine your rooms with you present, and Lady Doring beside you?" "Yes." Frederick inclined his head. "Then that is what will happen." Lady Doring's expression softened by a fraction. A better arrangement. Frederick turned to the committee. "The invoice will be placed in Mr. Pembroke's custody. No one is accused by its existence. No one is cleared by my opinion. It will be examined." Lady Sowerby drew her gloves from the table. As she did, one glove caught against the carved chair arm, a loose strand of violet silk lifted from the repaired cuff. Elspeth saw it first. The color was nearly black in shadow, then purple when the firelight touched it. The same color Mr. Pembroke had sealed from the replaced lining of the blue Morocco case. Frederick followed her gaze. Lady Sowerby looked down at her own glove and went pale. "Who mended that seam?" Elspeth asked. Lady Sowerby pulled the glove free too quickly. Lady Arabella's maid. The room changed again. Not toward certainty. Toward a question no one could now pretend had arrived by accident. Lady Sowerby held the glove against her palm as though concealing the thread might undo what everyone had seen. "It was torn yesterday morning," she said. Lady Arabella's maid mended it before the exhibition. Frederick did not look at Elspeth. He kept his attention on Lady Sowerby, allowing the question to remain hers. "Why were you at Kestrelmere, house before the other guests?" "Lady Arabella asked me to review the invitation list." "For what purpose?" "She said certain people might create embarrassment if admitted." Lady Doring's expression turned cold. "Miss Wycliffe was already expected to accompany me." "I did not say she meant Miss Wycliffe. You did not need to." Lady Sowerby's color deepened. She looked toward the other committee members, but the room that had so readily examined Elspeth now offered her no refuge. "The thread proves only that the same maid used the same silk," she said. Elspeth folded her hands on the table. Yes, the simple agreement unsettled Lady Sowerby more than accusation might have. "Then you don't believe I repaired the case?" "I have no evidence that you did." "But you suspect, Lady Arabella." "I suspect that a thread connects two objects. It does not yet tell us who ordered either repair." Frederick glanced at the glove. "Will you surrender it for comparison?" Lady Sowerby stiffened. "You have no right to seize it." "I did not say seize." He looked at Mr. Pembroke, who had entered quietly behind him after being summoned from his office. "Can a comparison be made without retaining the glove?" "Yes," the solicitor replied. "I can remove no fibre without Lady Sowerby's consent, but I may record the colour, twist, stitch pattern, and repair method in her presence. She may keep the glove under written acknowledgement." Lady Sowerby's eyes moved from him to Elspeth. "And if I refuse, then your refusal will also be recorded," Elspeth said. Nothing more. That answer closed the only escape built from indignation. Lady Sowerby sat slowly. Mr. Pembroke placed a clean sheet beneath the glove and examined the repaired cuff without touching it. The silk was violet, 2-ply, and waxed. The seam used a narrow overcast stitch, uncommon in commercial glove repair, but common in household mending. He wrote each observation, then asked Lady Sowerby to describe when and where the work had been done. "In Lady Arabella's dressing room," she said. "Her maid stitched it while we spoke." "What did Lady Arabella discuss?" Frederick asked. "The exhibition. The Duke's reluctance to display the heirloom, the importance of ending old rumours." "Which rumours?" "That the sapphire had been lost." A slight pause followed, and that William Wycliffe had once handled it improperly. Elspeth felt the insult reach toward an old wound and find less power than it once held. "My father was never publicly named in connection with the sapphire." Lady Arabella said collectors knew. Collectors knew what they were told. Lady Sowerby looked down at the glove. She said, "Your presence might be troublesome if you recognized something," and chose to make a scene. Then she expected I might recognize it before I entered the room. Elspeth said, "That means she knew I had seen the genuine mount." Frederick's gaze sharpened. "Did Lady Arabella tell you how she knew that?" "No. Did she ask you to do anything else?" Lady Sowerby hesitated. Mr. Pembroke's pen remained motionless above the page. "She asked me to invite Mr. Harcourt Vale to call this morning," Lady Sowerby said at last. Lady Doring's brows rose. The columnist, whose article appeared before breakfast. Lady Arabella said he might prevent false reports if he heard the proper account from a respectable woman. "Did you meet him?" Elspeth asked. "No. He sent word that he already possessed enough information." "Through whose hand was the invitation sent?" "My footman." "And Lady Arabella's request?" "On a card." Mr. Pembroke looked up. "Where is it?" Lady Sowerby's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. "I burned it." The younger committee member near the window drew breath. Frederick's expression did not change, but the air around him seemed to harden. "Why?" "Because it was improper for her to direct whom I received. I did not want my husband to see it." Lady Doring gave a quiet, humorless laugh. "So you destroyed the instruction, but obeyed it." Lady Sowerby flinched. Elspeth watched shame move across the woman's face. Not the shame of cruelty. The shame of discovering she had been used by someone whose approval she valued. "You wanted proximity to Lady Arabella," Elspeth said. "That does not make you the architect of this. It does mean you helped build the room in which I was accused." Lady Sowerby swallowed. "I did not know the invoice was false." "You did not ask who signed it." "No. You did not ask why Lady Arabella sent it to a charity committee rather than a solicitor." "No. You did not ask why the newspaper already knew details from inside Kestrelmere House." Lady Sowerby looked at her fully then. "No." Elspeth let the silence remain. "Then write that." Mr. Pembroke prepared the statement. Lady Sowerby described the glove repair, the invitation to Mr. Vale, Lady Arabella's warning about Elspeth, and the burned card. She signed each page. The glove remained in her possession under written acknowledgement that the seam would not be altered. The other committee members departed with fewer words than they had brought. Mrs. Pelling paused at the door, perhaps expecting Elspeth to reassure her that the subscription dispute had been forgotten. Elspeth returned instead to the coal accounts. By the time the final carriage left, twilight had gathered against the windows. Frederick stood near the mantel, while Mr. Pembroke sealed the forged invoice and Lady Sowerby's statement in separate packets. "The violet silk remains a connection, not proof," Elspeth said. "Agreed," he replied. "But Lady Arabella expected you to recognize the pendant." "Yes, and expected society to distrust you when you did." "Yes." His hand rested on the mantel edge. "I should have seen earlier that the attack was prepared before the exhibition." "You saw enough to keep the case closed until proof was recorded. Not enough to prevent this afternoon. No one could prevent society from choosing cruelty. You can prevent the evidence from being reshaped to suit it." He looked at her with quiet intensity. "You make protection sound more difficult than command." "It is." Before he could answer, Lady Doring's footman entered, carrying a folded message. "This came from an auction broker in Holborn, my lady." The man who brought it said the matter concerned Miss Wycliffe's late father. Lady Doring took the paper, read it, then passed it to Elspeth. The broker, Mr. Hale, wrote that a gentleman had called 2 days earlier, asking about tools, sold from William Wycliffe's workshop after his death. The caller had described a cracked brass loop in a worn leather case and offered £5 for information about its purchaser. Mr. Hale remembered the gentleman because he had once attended several auctions on behalf of Sir Claudius Mercer. His name was Mr. Vane. Elspeth read the letter twice. "The loop was my father's," she said. "He wore it against his right eye." The leather case had split along one seam. "Did it contain anything unusual?" Mr. Pembroke asked. "Not that I knew." Frederick's eyes narrowed. "Then why is Vane searching for it now?" "Because he believes it holds something," Elspeth said, "or because he knows someone else is searching first." The footman returned before the thought could settle. This time he carried a narrow parcel and a receipt book. "A clerk from Marlowe and Finch, stationers, my lady. He says the parcel was deposited with written instructions and may be opened only before Mr. Pembroke and 2 witnesses." Mr. Pembroke examined the receipt. "The sender has signed his name. Elspeth already knew it. Mr. Vane." "Yes." The clerk remained in the hall while the transfer was recorded. Lady Doring and Frederick signed as witnesses. Mr. Pembroke cut the string and unfolded the brown paper. Inside lay a cracked leather case darkened by years of handling. Elspeth recognized the shallow curve pressed into the bridge before the lid was fully opened. Her father's brass loop rested inside. For one moment, the room disappeared. She saw William bending over a garnet clasp, one eye closed, the brass rim catching morning light. She heard him telling her that the smallest flaw became visible only when one stopped wishing it away. Elspeth did not touch the case. "It's his." Mr. Pembroke examined the split seam. "The lining has been opened before." Under the same witness procedure used for the blue case, he lifted the loosened edge with tweezers. A tightly rolled scrap of paper slid onto the clean sheet. The handwriting was uneven, but unmistakable. William's final R dragged slightly downward, the old tremor in his hand preserved in ink. Mr. Pembroke read the 6 words aloud. "The stone was never sent abroad." Frederick looked at Elspeth. "Then your father saw it in England?" Her eyes remained on the loop. "Yes." 11 years after William had been silenced, the tool taken from his ruined workshop had returned, carrying the truth he had hidden inside it. But the parcel contained one more message, written in Mr. Vane's hand beneath the stationer's receipt. "I will speak before Sir Claudius leaves England. After that, no bargain remains." By 9 o'clock the next morning, every object that had passed through Lady Doring's drawing-room had been divided according to what it could prove. Mr. Pembroke kept William's handwritten scrap in a sealed envelope at his office, together with Mr. Vane's signed message and the recorded statement from the stationer's clerk. The cracked brass loop and its leather case had been wrapped separately, inventoried, and placed in the solicitor's strong cabinet until the hidden note could be authenticated. Elspeth had not touched either since recognizing them. Her father's tracing plate remained with her, wrapped in the old chamois cloth inside her reticule. The difference mattered. Memory belonged to her. Evidence required witnesses. At Kestrelmere House, the picture gallery had been cleared of guests, flowers, and musicians. Only the false pendant remained beneath the crystal cover. Lord Tukes stood beside the display table. Mr. Pembroke waited near the windows with a ledger of transfers. A broad-shouldered man with a silver beard arranged small instruments inside a fitted leather case. Frederick introduced him as Mr. Nathaniel Broome, a jeweller trusted by several royal household suppliers and unconnected to Kestrelmere, Sir Claudius Mercer, or William Wycliffe. Lady Doring remained beside Elspeth. Lady Arabella had not yet entered. Mr. Broom has been told only that the pendant's authenticity is disputed, Frederick said. He has not seen Miss Wycliffe's tracing plate or heard her description of the repair marks. Mr. Broom gave Elspeth a brief professional bow. I prefer objects before explanations. So do I, she replied. Frederick drew the sealed envelope containing the display key from inside his coat. The red wax bore his signature and Lord Tewkes's across the fold. Do you confirm the seals are unbroken? He asked. Lord Tewkes examined both sides. I do. Mr. Pembroke recorded the time. Frederick cut the envelope before all present, removed the key, and unlocked the brass fitting. Mr. Broom asked that no one speak while he examined the pendant. Bellamy was not brought from his rooms. Instead, a footman trained in handling plate lifted the piece with leather-tipped tongs and placed it on white velvet. Mr. Broom began with the front. He studied the blue stone, the gold branches, the falcon, and the seed pearls through 2 different lenses. He then turned the pendant over and examined the hinge, claw, stone seat, and solder lines. 5 minutes passed. The silence did not feel empty. It tightened with every movement of his hands. Elspeth watched Frederick rather than the jewel. He did not look toward her for reassurance. He allowed Mr. Broom's independence to remain intact, even though the result might damage his house. That restraint carried more weight than another promise would have. At last, Mr. Broom set down his lens. The mount contains old gold, but the object in its present form is not old. Lord Tewkes frowned. Explain. The metal was recast, probably within the past 15 years. The darker color in the recesses was encouraged, chemically, then rubbed from the raised surfaces to imitate wear. The effect is competent but regular. Time is rarely so obedient. Elspeth felt her father's words move through the sentence without being spoken. The stone? Frederick asked. A 19th century sapphire cut to resemble an older table form. Attractive, but not of the age attributed to the Kestrelmere jewel. The seed pearls have also been dulled. Their surfaces show treatment inconsistent with natural aging. And the construction? Elspeth asked. Mr. Broom looked again at the reverse. The maker had a front description, perhaps a sketch, and partial notes about recognizable details. He did not work from the genuine pendant itself. Lady Arabella entered before anyone could answer. She wore a traveling cloak of dark plum and carried her gloves in one hand. You infer a great deal from metal, Mr. Broom. I infer only what the work permits. Could a restorer not have remade an old mount? Certainly, but a restorer with the original object would reproduce its hidden proportions more accurately than this. Frederick turned toward Elspeth. You may show him the tracing plate now. She opened the reticule, unfolded the chamois cloth upon a separate table, and revealed the brass plate marked 17. She did not hand it to Mr. Broom. He came to it, studied the incised outline, then measured the stone seat, hinge width, and distance between the falcon's claws. He returned to the counterfeit and repeated the measurements. They are not the same object, he said. The difference is less than 1/8 of an inch in several places, but it is consistent. The gallery pendant is narrower through the lower branch and broader across the stone seat. Whoever made it was copying appearance, not structure. Does the tracing appear recent, Mr. Pembroke asked. No. The oxidation, handling marks, and dirt within the deeper cuts are consistent with age. I cannot date it to a precise year, but it was not made for this week's dispute. Lady Arabella's mouth tightened, or Miss Wycliffe's father prepared it years ago to support some future deception. Elspeth met her gaze. Then he displayed remarkable patience for a conspiracy that began after his death. Lord Tukes lowered his eyes to conceal a reaction. Frederick did not, Mr. Broom. Record every finding before you leave this room. I've already begun. The pendant will not remain at Kestrelmere House. Lady Arabella's head turned sharply. It belongs to this family. Its ownership is disputed because its identity is false. Frederick looked at Mr. Broom. Can you secure it in your strong room? Yes. Mr. Pembroke will prepare a transfer. Lord Tukes will witness. The case key will be resealed after removal, and the empty display case will remain locked until photographed by the Society's draftsman. Elspeth noticed the adjustment. Frederick no longer gathered every endangered object under his own roof. He had learned from the blue case. Mr. Pembroke wrapped the counterfeit in clean chamois supplied by Mr. Broom, placed it inside a padded metal box, sealed both clasps, and recorded the transfer. Elspeth's own chamois cloth never left the table beside her reticule. When the signatures were complete, she rewrapped the tracing plate and returned it to her possession. Lady Arabella watched the pendant leave the gallery in Mr. Broom's custody. You are stripping Kestrelmere House of its own history, she said. No, Frederick replied. I am separating its history from what someone arranged for us to believe. A porter appeared at the gallery door. Your Grace, Lady Fenwick's trunks are ready for inventory before departure. Departure? Elspeth asked. Lady Arabella drew on one glove. I'm going to Brighton. I have no intention of remaining in a house where servants' debts and a tradesman's grievance govern every room. Frederick's voice cooled. Your luggage will be listed, not searched, unless you consent or legal authority is obtained. How gracious. Your carriage leaves at noon, not before. The porter consulted his paper. There are 3 trunks, 1 jewel box, 1 dispatch case, and a long parcel wrapped in green baize. Lady Arabella's fingers stopped at the second glove. The hesitation lasted no more than a breath. But Elspeth saw it. What is in the parcel? Frederick asked. A walking cane. Then, the inventory will describe the maker and length. I don't remember. The maker. You may identify it when the porter brings it. Lady Arabella's expression became perfectly still. Before she could answer, a footman hurried in from the passage. Your Grace, there is another matter concerning Mr. Bellamy's effects. Frederick turned. What matter? The steward requested that his travelling trunk be sent to his brother's house. Mr. Pembroke's clerk was recording the contents when he found a locked writing case beneath a false bottom. Mr. Pembroke closed the transfer ledger. Was it opened? No, sir. The clerk stopped at once. Good. There are initials stamped into the leather. The footman swallowed. C.M. Sir Claudius Mercer. Lady Arabella's face lost all expression. Frederick asked, Where is the case now? Still inside the trunk, under guard in Mr. Bellamy's room. Remove neither case nor trunk until Mr. Pembroke prepares the inventory. The solicitor nodded. I'll seal the case in place, then request a magistrate's authority before any lock is disturbed. Elspeth looked from Lady Arabella's green baize parcel to the unseen writing case in Bellamy's room. One object belonged to a woman trying to leave. The other had been hidden by a steward in debt. Both had reached the house through people who had spent years protecting the same lie. Bring the green parcel here, Frederick said. The porter returned, carrying it across both arms. The wrapping was narrow and long enough to contain a gentleman's cane, but its weight settled toward the center rather than the end. Frederick did not touch it. Lady Arabella, you may allow this to be opened before witnesses. or it will remain sealed until legal permission is obtained. She looked at the parcel, then at Elspeth. "Open it, Mr." Pembroke recorded her consent. The cord was untied, the green baize folded back, and a walnut box appeared beneath it. 2 pale holes marked the lid where a brass nameplate had once been removed. Lady Arabella drew a small key from the chain at her waist, but did not yet offer it. Hooves sounded in the mews below. A moment later, another footman entered, breathless despite his training. "Your Grace, Mr. Vane has arrived." Frederick's eyes narrowed. "From the front entrance?" "No, Your Grace. He came through the mews." Elspeth looked at the locked walnut box, then toward the corridor beyond the gallery. The man who had destroyed her father's name had not fled England. He had entered Kestrelmere House through the servants' way, carrying whatever bargain he believed could still save him. Lady Arabella held the small key above the walnut box for several seconds before placing it in the lock. No one urged her. The delay had become its own testimony. When the lid finally opened, the first counterfeit lay upon faded cream velvet, broader and heavier than the pendant removed from the gallery. Its square blue center caught the light without depth. Even before Mr. Broom bent over it, Elspeth saw the smooth hinge where her father's dark crescent repair should have been. Mrs. Rook's memory had been exact. "Do not lift it yet, Mr." Pembroke said. He recorded Lady Arabella's consent, the condition of the box, the missing brass nameplate, and the presence of every witness. Only then did Mr. Broom examine the pendant with his lens. "Older than the gallery copy," he said. "Less skillfully made. The central stone is glass backed with foil, the gold is heavier, and the sapphire seat is broader. This was intended to persuade by candlelight, not survive examination." Frederick looked at Lady Arabella. "You kept this for 10 years. I kept it hidden. That distinction grows smaller each time you use it." Her face hardened, but she did not answer. Footsteps approached through the adjoining passage. Mr. Vane entered without escorting himself like a guest. Rain had darkened his coat, and the years had narrowed his face rather than softened it. He stopped when he saw Elspeth. Recognition reached him first. Fear followed. "Miss Wycliffe, you remember me. I remember your father. You remember what you said about him, Mr." Vane removed his hat. "Yes." Frederick stood beside Elspeth, close enough to prevent intrusion, but not in front of her. "Why did you enter through the mews?" he asked. "Because the front of this house is watched." "By whom?" "Men Sir Claudius pays when he wishes to know which doors open." "And why are you here?" Mr. Vane's gaze moved toward the walnut box. "Because Lady Arabella sent word that the first duplicate had been found." "I sent no such word," she said. "Bellamy did." The room sharpened. Frederick's voice cooled. "Bellamy has sent no message since last night." Then someone allowed him to believe he had. Mr. Vane looked toward the gallery door. "It changes nothing. Sir Claudius intends to leave England after the sale. Once he does, every surviving crime will be placed upon me." "And you object only because you were meant to survive the blame," Elspeth said. He did not insult her with denial. "Yes." Mr. Pembroke stepped forward. "You sent William Wycliffe's Lupin note. Why did you possess them?" "Sir Claudius bought several lots when the workshop tools were auctioned. I purchased them in his name. The loop was among them." "Did you know the note was hidden inside?" "Not at first. I found it years later when the lining split. I kept it because it proved Wycliffe knew the sapphire had never gone to Antwerp." "You kept it for leverage." "Yes." Elspeth looked at the man who had preserved her father's truth as insurance while allowing his name to remain stained. Then do not pretend returning it was mercy. I won't. The bluntness made him no better. It only made the bargain visible. Mr. Vane reached inside his coat. 2 footmen moved at once, but Frederick raised one hand. Vane drew out a sealed packet and placed it on the table. The wax bore the old Kestrelmere falcon, not Frederick's present signet. Mr. Pembroke inspected the fold, the endorsement and the unbroken seal, dated June of 1854, addressed to Mr. Vane. Frederick did not touch it, open it. The solicitor cut the outer fold without damaging the wax. He unfolded one sheet and read in silence first. The colour left his face. "Read it aloud," Elspeth said. Mr. Pembroke looked to Frederick. The Duke's jaw tightened. "Do as she asks." The letter ordered Mr. Vane to preserve the account that the Kestrelmere Sapphire had gone to Antwerp for security. It instructed him to support Sir Claudius Mercer's explanation should collectors inquire. The final paragraph named William Wycliffe. If public blame became necessary, the letter said, Wycliffe alone must answer. The exact phrase from beneath the blue morocco lining. Entered the room again, no longer a fragment whose author might be disputed, but an instruction bearing the late Duke's seal. Elspeth heard no sound for several heartbeats. Her hand closed around the reticule at her waist. Inside it, her father's chamois cloth held the tracing plate he had made while, knowing someone in this house had already selected him for sacrifice. She tried to open the clasp. Her fingers did not obey. Frederick saw. He did not reach for her. He did not speak her father's name before she was ready. He turned instead to Mr. Vane. What happened after this letter? Wycliffe returned to Kestrelmere House. He had found blue dust beneath the mount's left claw and knew the sapphire had been removed before he received it. Your father told him the stone was in Antwerp. He did not believe him, Elspeth said. No. 2 weeks later, Wycliffe saw the genuine sapphire in Sir Claudius's cabinet. The 6 words hidden inside the loop seemed to breathe again. The stone was never sent abroad. How, Mr. Pembroke asked. Sir Claudius summoned him to inspect an emerald. Wycliffe entered the cabinet room before the attendants had cleared the table. The sapphire was there, loose in white silk. And the emerald accusation? Elspeth asked. Mr. Vane lowered his eyes. Prepared afterward. The stone was never stolen. Sir Claudius kept it throughout. I said, I saw your father place it in a drawer because your late Duke required Wycliffe's credibility destroyed before he spoke. Lady Doring's hand closed over the head of her cane. William died beneath that lie. I know. You knew then. Yes. Elspeth's grief did not rise as tears. It became stillness. Her father had not been ruined by confusion, envy, or a mistaken witness. Men with wealth had selected the least protected craftsman in the room and called the choice necessary. Frederick took the letter only after Mr. Pembroke offered it. He read the final paragraph, then folded it along its original crease. Why does Sir Claudius leave England now? Because he intends to sell the genuine sapphire tomorrow night. Where? At a private reception of the Society of Antiquaries. A Prussian collector, travelling under the name Herr Falk, has agreed to inspect the stone at 10 o'clock. Mr. Pembroke's pen paused. Why now? The gallery copy was meant to settle the Kestrelmere claim. Once this house publicly accepted a substitute as genuine, Sir Claudius could sell the real sapphire without fear of challenge. Frederick turned to Lady Arabella. You arranged the exhibition. She looked at the first duplicate in its box. I arranged for the house to accept what Sir Claudius said would protect it. You knew the gallery pendant was false. I knew it was not the first duplicate. That is not an answer. It is the answer I can give today. Elspeth studied her. Lady Arabella was not ready to confess the whole machinery. Fear still held more of her than conscience did. And if I recognized it? Elspeth asked. Lady Arabella's gaze met hers. Then society already knew what to believe about your father. The cruelty was quieter than an insult and more complete. Frederick faced Elspeth. You will not attend tomorrow night. She looked at him as if she had misheard. I beg your pardon? Sir Claudius has already used your name once. If the reception turns hostile, Mr. Broom can identify the sapphire. Mr. Pembroke can present the documents. You do not need to be exposed again. My father's name will be spoken before the men who abandoned him. That is precisely why I won't permit you to stand there while they attack you. You won't permit me. His expression tightened. This is not about your courage. No, it is about your fear. Lady Doring remained silent. Mr. Pembroke lowered his pen. Elspeth continued. My father was destroyed because powerful men decided it was safer for him not to be believed. Now the truth has become costly to your house, and your first instinct is to remove me from the room where it will be judged. That is not the same. It feels remarkably familiar. Frederick looked at his father's letter. The hesitation that followed was brief, but it was enough. Elspeth opened her reticule. This time her hands obeyed. She unfolded the chamois cloth upon the table, lifted the brass tracing plate from it, and placed the plate alone before Mr. Pembroke. The cloth returned immediately to her reticule. Seal this with the other evidence. Frederick looked up. Why, because I will not have anyone say I altered it after today. Mr. Pembroke wrapped the plate in clean evidence paper, sealed it, and wrote a receipt transferring custody from Elspeth Wycliffe to his office. She signed. You are still part of this inquiry, Frederick said. No. Elspeth met his eyes. I am a witness to it. There is a difference. She turned to Lady Doring. I would like to go home. Frederick took one step toward her, then stopped. Elspeth. She looked back. Tomorrow night, Your Grace, you must decide whether you are recovering a stolen sapphire or protecting a ducal name. You cannot do both. By 8 o'clock the next morning, Mr. Pembroke's office had become the most carefully guarded room in Chancery Lane. The late Duke's letter lay beneath glass beside 6 undisputed examples of his handwriting. A paper merchant had identified the stock as one supplied to Kestrelmere House since 1854. A seal engraver had confirmed the old falcon impression. The wax contained the same mineral pigment found on letters from the late Duke's private correspondence. None of those facts made the words less cruel. They made denial impossible. Elspeth was not present. When the final authentication was signed, she remained at Lady Doring's house, where her father's chamois cloth rested inside her reticule, and the brass tracing plate remained sealed in Mr. Pembroke's custody. Frederick attended the examination with Lord Tukes. He read each report twice, then signed the solicitor's inventory without attempting to soften the conclusion. His father had not been misled. He had written the instruction himself. At 8:30, a magistrate arrived to examine the sealed writing case bearing the initials C.M. It had remained exactly where Mr. Pembroke's clerk found it, beneath the false bottom of Bellamy's trunk, until the trunk and case were inventoried, sealed and removed under witness. The magistrate inspected every signature across the wrappers before authorizing the lock to be opened. Lord Tukes stood beside him. Frederick remained across the table. Mr. Pembroke turned the small key supplied by the magistrate's locksmith. The case opened without resistance. Inside lay no jewel and no dramatic confession. There were only 2 folded papers, a packet of receipts, and a narrow account memorandum written in Sir Claudius Mercer's hand. The simplicity of the contents made them more dangerous. One paper recorded 3 payments to Bellamy over 6 months. The first covered an old gambling debt. The second was described as household inconvenience. The third was marked upon acceptance of the substitute. The packet contained a coded receipt from a Birmingham gold worker who had supplied antique-style mounts to collectors unwilling to ask questions. The maker had been instructed to reverse the pomegranate leaf as W marked it, dull the pearls, and use recast gold. Mr. Pembroke read the phrase aloud. Frederick's face hardened. They built the copy to point toward William Wycliffe. "Yes," the magistrate said, "and Mr. Bellamy appears to have arranged the commission. Can the maker be found? A warrant will be sent to Birmingham this morning." Mr. Pembroke unfolded the second document. It was a private sale memorandum between Sir Claudius Mercer and a Prussian collector travelling under the name Herr Falk. A deposit had already been paid. Final payment depended upon physical inspection of a loose blue sapphire at 10 o'clock that night in the mineral cabinet room of the Society of Antiquaries. In the description, Sir Claudius had not called the stone the Kestrelmere sapphire. He had named it the Wycliffe stone. Lord Tukes read the words again. Why would Mercer attach Wycliffe's name to the jewel? Because among the men who knew the truth, William's name identified the stone more precisely than Kestrelmere's, Mr. Pembroke said. He was the craftsman who saw it after the supposed journey to Antwerp. The magistrate authorized a warrant covering the attempted sale, the loose sapphire, if presented, and documents directly related to its ownership. A Metropolitan Police Inspector would wait in an adjoining room at the Society. The chairman would control the reception, the witnesses, and the speaking order. He would not direct the seizure. Sir Claudius would not be warned that lawful authority stood nearby. Herr Falk had agreed to insist upon the inspection required by his contract. Greed, not pride, would bring the stone into the light. Frederick looked at the memorandum. Miss Wycliffe must see this. Mr. Pembroke closed the case. She will, but not as part of an order from you. The correction landed without ceremony. Frederick accepted it. Shortly before noon, he arrived at Lady Doring's house alone except for his coachman. He sent in his card and waited in the hall until Lady Doring chose to receive him. She did not offer tea. "You've come to apologize," she said. "Yes, then do not make the apology serve your comfort." "I won't." Elspeth sat in the back parlour at a small writing desk. 3 letters lay before her. One offered employment in France if she left London immediately. Another advised her to withdraw her accusation for the sake of her future. The third contained no signature. A tradesman's daughter should know when silence has been purchased for her. The cracked loop and its leather case remained at Mr. Pembroke's office until the hidden note could be fully authenticated. Only the chamois cloth had come home with her. It rested beneath her hand inside the closed reticule. Frederick stopped at the threshold. "May I enter?" She looked at him for several seconds. "You may." He came no farther than the chair opposite the desk. "The letter has been authenticated." "Your father's letter?" "Yes, then the Society must hear it. It will." She waited. Frederick removed his gloves, but did not sit until she indicated the chair. She did not. He remained standing. "Yesterday I told you that you would not attend tonight, because I was afraid Sir Claudius would attack you again. I called that protection." Elspeth's gaze remained steady. "It wasn't. No, it was control. The admission altered the room more than rank could have done. I decided that my fear gave me authority over your place in the truth. It didn't. You knew better before yesterday. I did. You forgot when the truth began to cost your family. Frederick did not reach for intention. Yes. Lady Doring remained in the adjoining drawing room with the door open, near enough to preserve propriety and far enough to grant privacy. Frederick continued, I cannot ask you to trust an apology. I can ask what conditions would allow you to stand in that room tonight by your own choice. Elspeth looked at the anonymous letter, then back at him. I will attend as Lady Doring's companion, not as your protected witness. Agreed. Mr. Pembroke controls every document. The tracing plate remains sealed until Mr. Broom has recorded his independent examination of the loose sapphire. Agreed. I speak about my father's work before you speak about Kestrelmere. Frederick's jaw tightened only because he understood the price. Agreed. The chairman must guarantee in writing that I won't be interrupted by rank. Mr. Pembroke has already requested that. You will not secure my credibility by announcing that you believe me. What shall I do? State the evidence, then state what your house did. He held her gaze. My father deliberately sacrificed an innocent craftsman to conceal his own dishonesty. Something in Elspeth's face shifted, though not yet toward forgiveness. Yes. Frederick placed his gloves on the edge of the chair, but still did not sit. There is more. The magistrate opened Sir Claudius's writing case this morning. The case found in Bellamy's trunk? Yes. Bellamy received payments. The coded receipt instructs the maker to reverse the leaf as Wycliffe marked it. The current copy was designed to make your knowledge appear guilty. Elspeth's breath slowed. Then Bellamy's debt was the opening Sir Claudius used. It appears so, and tonight. The sale memorandum requires physical inspection at 10. Her folk will insist. A magistrate and inspector will wait in the adjoining room under warrant. The society chairman will control only the reception and speaking order. She considered the plan. Does Sir Claudius know? Vane has produced the letter. No. Does he know Lady Arabella will attend? He expects her to present the first duplicate as the family reference piece. Then she must resist before she confesses. Frederick frowned. Wise, because immediate cooperation will warn him. He trusts her fear more than her loyalty. Let him see her hesitate. Let him believe she still wants Kestrelmere protected. And when Herr Falk demands the stone, Sir Claudius will produce it because he has already accepted a deposit. Refusal exposes the sale before he gains the money. Frederick's attention remained wholly on her. It was the attention that had first drawn her into the inquiry, now changed by the knowledge that noticing a woman did not grant possession of her decisions. You should direct the order with Mr. Pembroke, he said. I will. He took the sale memorandum from his coat, but did not hand it to her. Mr. Pembroke sent a certified copy for you. May I place it on the desk? Yes. He laid it beside the anonymous letter. Elspeth read the description of the blue sapphire, the inspection clause, and Sir Claudius's private name for the stone, the Wycliffe stone. For 11 years, the men who destroyed William publicly had used his name privately to distinguish the genuine object from their lies. Frederick watched her read. Your father's name survived inside their bargain. Not from respect. No. From fear that someone might confuse the real stone with their copies. Yes. Elspeth folded the memorandum once. Then tonight they will hear the name without owning its meaning. Frederick inclined his head. And this time you'll decide how it is spoken. At 10 minutes before 10 that evening, The mineral cabinet room of the Society of Antiquaries held more truth than ceremony. Glass-fronted cases lined the walls, filled with engraved gems, Roman coins, and fragments of ancient metalwork, but the central table had been cleared beneath a row of steady gas jets. Elspeth entered on Lady Doring's arm, wearing dark grey silk and no ornament. Her father's chamois cloth rested inside the reticule at her waist. The brass tracing plate remained sealed in Mr. Pembroke's custody. Across the room, Frederick stood beside Lord Tukes and Mr. Broom. He did not cross to meet her. He bowed once and let her choose where to stand. Mr. Vane waited near the far wall under the observation of a society officer. Lady Arabella stood beside the sealed walnut box containing the first duplicate. The chairman had received Mr. Pembroke's written request and agreed to the order of proceedings. A magistrate and a metropolitan police inspector waited in an adjoining chamber with the warrant. Neither wore authority like theatre. Their presence was known only to the chairman, Mr. Pembroke, Frederick, and Elspeth. At 9:55, the chairman closed the doors. Lady Arabella Fenwick has asked to clarify the history of an object formerly held within the Kestrelmere collection. Lady Arabella's gloved hand rested on the walnut box. She did not open it. "I have not asked to clarify anything," she said. "I was told my attendance was necessary." Sir Claudius had not yet arrived. The resistance was deliberate, as Elspeth had advised. It needed to look like fear, because fear was what he trusted. Frederick spoke without stepping forward. "You consented in writing to bring the object. I consented to prevent it from being taken from me under warrant." "Then say what it is." Lady Arabella looked toward the closed doors. "A substitute." The word moved through the invited collectors. "A first substitute," Mr. Pembroke said, "made after the genuine sapphire had been removed from its mount." "I did not remove it." "No one has said you did," Elspeth replied. Lady Arabella turned toward her. "You intend to make innocence from distinctions. I intend to make responsibility from them." The older woman's expression tightened. She placed the key in the lock. Mr. Pembroke and Lord Tukes inspected the signatures across the seals before she broke them. When the lid opened, the crude first duplicate lay upon faded velvet, its foil-backed glass dark beneath the gaslight. Mr. Broom examined it briefly and confirmed the findings already recorded. Lady Arabella kept one hand on the table. The late Duke removed the sapphire to satisfy debts to Sir Claudius Mercer. I discovered the empty mount afterward. I sent it to William Wycliffe before dawn because I believed it could be repaired quietly and the stone recovered before anyone knew. Elspeth heard the room draw inward. Lady Arabella continued. "I did not tell Mr. Wycliffe the sapphire had been taken. When the first counterfeit arrived, I allowed it to remain. Years later, when Sir Claudius demanded that Kestrelmere accept another copy publicly, I helped arrange the exhibition." "And Miss Wycliffe?" the chairman asked. Lady Arabella's gaze moved to Elspeth. "I knew she might recognize the workmanship. I arranged for society to doubt her if she did." "The newspaper?" Mr. Pembroke asked. "I supplied her father's history. Bellamy supplied details from the house. The forged invoice? Bellamy arranged it with the same papers used for the current copy." "Lady Sowerby?" Elspeth asked. A shadow of shame crossed Lady Arabella's face. Useful because she wanted to be near influence. And the phrase beneath the blue case lining, "I carried the note. I did not write it. But you delivered it, knowing William might be blamed. I knew only that the family must not be ruined." Elspeth held her gaze. "You knew a poorer man would bear what the family refused to bear." Lady Arabella looked away first. Yes, the confession settled without applause. It did not cleanse her. It placed her where the truth required. At exactly 10, the doors opened. Sir Claudius Mercer entered with Herr Falk, 2 attendants, and the confidence of a man who expected every conscience present to have a price. He stopped when he saw the open walnut box. His attention moved from Lady Arabella to Mr. Vane, then to Elspeth. "What is this?" "The preliminary comparison you requested," the chairman said. Sir Claudius's eyes narrowed. "I requested a private examination. The society does not conduct private sales in rooms containing disputed property." Herr Falk adjusted his spectacles. "My agreement requires inspection before final payment." "You have my assurances," Sir Claudius said. "I paid for a stone, not assurances, Mr." Pembroke placed a certified copy of the sale memorandum on the table. "You accepted a deposit. The balance is due only after physical inspection of the loose sapphire described here." Sir Claudius smiled without warmth. "A solicitor has no standing in my transaction." "No, Mr." Pembroke replied. "But Herr Falk does." The Prussian collector stepped away from him. "I won't complete the sale without seeing the stone." Refusal would expose Sir Claudius as a fraud before the very men whose respect sustained his business. Compliance, he still believed, would prove ownership through possession and Kestrelmere silence. Lady Arabella's hesitation had reassured him that fear remained intact. He looked at Frederick. "Your Grace, do you claim that object in the walnut box as your family's authentic pendant?" Frederick answered carefully. "No." Sir Claudius's confidence returned by a fraction. He signalled to one attendant. A leather dispatch case was placed on the table. Sir Claudius unlocked it himself and removed a packet wrapped in white silk. When he unfolded the cloth, a square blue sapphire caught the gaslight and deepened to midnight. Elspeth did not move. 11 years of lies had led to this small, silent stone. Mr. Broom approached only after Sir Claudius gave formal consent to examination before witnesses. The jeweller recorded the weight, dimensions, worn edges, and a shallow cavity along one upper corner where an old setting had gripped the stone. He turned it beneath the light, then compared it with the first duplicate and the dimensions he had already recorded from the gallery copy. "This stone predates both counterfeits," he said. "Its abrasions are consistent with repeated removal from an older mount." Sir Claudius folded his arms. "That proves age, not theft." "Correct," Elspeth said. He looked at her with contempt. "Then your presence remains unnecessary." "My father's record does not." Mr. Pembroke brought forward the sealed packet containing the brass tracing plate. Lord Tukes, the chairman, and Lady Doring confirmed the signatures and unbroken wax. Only then did he open it and place the plate on white paper. Mr. Broom had not seen it since the examination of the gallery copy. Elspeth remained on her side of the table. She did not touch the plate. "The backward pomegranate leaf belongs on the left," she said. "The dark crescent beneath the lower hinge marks where my father stabilized a crack. These 3 graver lines lie beneath the sapphire seat. This upper left claw was widened after the stone was removed by force." Mr. Broom measured the incised stone seat, then the sapphire. He aligned the dimensions without placing metal against the gem. The cavity on the sapphire corresponds to the widened upper left claw. He checked the angle again. "Precisely, Mr." Pembroke laid out the evidence in order, not as spectacle, but as record. The red ledger entry marked 17. The fragment from beneath the blue case lining, the late Duke's authenticated letter instructing that Wycliffe alone must answer. William's handwritten note from the loop, Mr. Vane's testimony, the payment memorandum linking Sir Claudius to Bellamy, the maker's coded receipt ordering the reversed leaf, the sale agreement naming the object the Wycliffe stone. 2 counterfeits, 1 genuine sapphire. Sir Claudius's face had lost colour. Vane is a confessed liar, which is why no single statement carries this case, Elspeth said. The metal, paper, measurements, payments, and your own sale memorandum agree without him. Your father was no innocent. Frederick spoke before Sir Claudius could continue, but he did not speak for Elspeth. He spoke for his house. William Wycliffe was innocent of the Mercer Emerald accusation. My father knew it. My father ordered his reputation destroyed to conceal the removal of this sapphire. Lady Arabella preserved the deception. My steward assisted a later fraud. My title gave their silence force. Sir Claudius stared at him. You would disgrace your own father before tradesmen and clerks. Frederick's expression did not change. He disgraced himself before them. The words entered the room with the weight of judgment finally placed where it belonged. The chairman opened the adjoining door. The magistrate and inspector entered. The warrant was read aloud. The genuine sapphire, dispatch case, sale papers, and related correspondence were taken into lawful custody. Sir Claudius did not confess. He did not need to. Every path away from the truth had already been closed. Mr. Vane's cooperation was recorded without promise of immunity. Lady Arabella agreed to give formal evidence. Bellamy's payment trail and altered register would be examined separately. When the officials had finished, Mr. Pembroke resealed the tracing plate. He returned William's cracked loop and leather case to Elspeth, because the hidden note had already been removed, authenticated, and retained under separate seal. She held the tool with both hands. Frederick remained several feet away. He offered no apology that might steal the moment. What happens now? He asked. Elspeth looked at the sapphire, disappearing beneath lawful seal. Then, at the loop that had carried her father's truth through 11 years of silence. Now the law does its work. Her gaze met his, and we discover whether trust can do the same. 6 months later, the Kestrelmere sapphire remained unset. The magistrate had released it only after the principal proceedings concluded, and Frederick had refused every suggestion that it be placed in a new mount before the full history was corrected in writing. It rested instead in Mr. Broom's strong room beneath joint seal, accompanied by the measurements, the old abrasions, the authenticated tracing, and the record of how a ducal family had allowed an innocent man to bear its shame. Society found the decision disappointing. A recovered jewel was expected to glitter at dinners. Frederick preferred that it remain beside the truth. The legal consequences came without spectacle. Sir Claudius Mercer was convicted of conspiracy to defraud and of seeking payment by false pretenses in connection with the attempted sale. Other claims involving objects from his collection remained under examination. Mr. Vane formally admitted that his testimony against William Wycliffe had been false. His cooperation counted in his favour, but it did not erase what he had done. Bellamy lost his position at Kestrelmere House and answered for the altered register, the unlawful use of the archive key, and his paid assistance in commissioning the later counterfeit. The memorandum found inside the CM writing case proved that debt had opened the door and greed had kept it open. Lady Arabella gave full evidence. She surrendered her correspondence, withdrew from London society, and was never again permitted authority over Kestrelmere property or household affairs. Frederick provided her with a modest maintenance, because he would not use poverty as punishment, but he did not protect her from the truth. Lady Sowerby's part was recorded precisely. She had been used, but she had also chosen importance over fairness. Her name did not appear among the chief conspirators. Her judgment suffered instead. The strongest consequence was not a conviction. It was the restoration of William Wycliffe's name. Kestrelmere estate accounts were corrected under Mr. Pembroke's supervision. A formal declaration acknowledged that William had repaired the genuine mount, had been falsely accused in the Mercer Emerald affair, and had suffered professional ruin because the late Duke knowingly chose him as a scapegoat. The restitution was not called charity. It was recorded as a debt owed by the Kestrelmere estate to William Wycliffe's estate, and paid through a written settlement. Trade journals printed the declaration in full. So did the newspapers after Frederick informed them that any shortened version would be answered with the complete authenticated record. Elspeth read the first notice in Lady Doring's morning room with her father's cracked loop lying closed beside her hand. She had imagined vindication for years without admitting it. In imagination, it had felt bright. In reality, it felt quiet and heavy, like setting down a burden carried so long that the body had forgotten how to stand without it. Lady Doring found her there. "You are allowed to weep," she said. "I know. You are also allowed not to." Elspeth rested 2 fingers on the leather case. "I know that too." Frederick did not come that day. He had learned that presence could become intrusion, even when affection made it feel necessary. He called 2 mornings later at the proper hour and asked whether Elspeth would walk with him in Kensington Gardens under Lady Doring's chaperonage. That first walk became another, then a concert, then long conversations in which disagreement was no longer treated as a crisis to be managed. He did not become less powerful. He became more careful with power. When Elspeth said no, he did not praise her courage as a way of pressing again. When she questioned an estate decision, he answered the question instead of defending his rank. When fear entered him, he named it before it became an order. Trust did not return as a single feeling. It returned in small, repeatable proofs. Elspeth changed as well. With the restitution and income from her first independent commissions, she leased 2 rooms near Hatton Garden and opened a practice authenticating jewels, metalwork, and restoration records. Mr. Broom referred the first client. Lord Tukes sent the second. By autumn, her name appeared on reports consulted by collectors who once would have crossed the street to avoid William Wycliffe's door. The brass plate above her own entrance read, "Elspeth Wycliffe, examiner of jewels and metalwork." Frederick never suggested changing it. He asked whether the northern window gave sufficient light. In October, he visited the workshop with Lady Doring and waited near the door while Elspeth completed an examination of a 17th century brooch. He did not interrupt when she lifted the loop to her eye. He did not speak until she closed her account book and invited him nearer. Lady Doring moved to the far window with the disciplined generosity of a chaperone, who intended to remain respectable without pretending deafness. Frederick placed a small wooden box on the work table. "Does this concern Kestrelmere property?" Elspeth asked. "No." "Sir Claudius's collection?" "No." "Then I may be willing to inspect it." He opened the box. Inside lay a simple gold ring. No stone interrupted the band. A narrow seam remained visible where the gold had been joined. "Mr. Broom made it," Frederick said. "I asked him not to polish away the seam." Elspeth looked from the ring to him. "Why?" because truth should not have to pretend it was never broken. The answer was simple enough to avoid becoming performance. Frederick did not kneel. The room was too small for ceremony, and what stood between them had been built in places where spectacle had often served deceit. "I love you," he said. "I love the way you refuse convenient answers, including mine. I love that you protect truth even when it offers you no comfort. I love the life you have made without asking permission from the people who once denied your father dignity." Elspeth held his gaze. "And what do you ask of me? A life chosen freely. Your work remains yours. Your name remains yours. Your earnings remain yours. Not because I promise generosity, but because the law will be made to recognize the boundary before we marry." Lady Doring turned slightly from the window. Elspeth looked at Frederick more closely. "You have spoken to Mr. Pembroke." "Yes. He has drafted a marriage settlement. You will review every line with your own advisor before I sign." "What does it protect?" "The workshop lease, your tools, the restitution, your present accounts, your future professional fees, and every report bearing your name. They will form your separate estate. I will have no authority to direct their use." Elspeth felt something shift inside her that no declaration of protection could have achieved. He had not merely promised not to control her, he had placed the limit beyond his future convenience. "And when you are afraid," she asked, "I will tell you I'm afraid before I call it protection. And when we disagree, I will not summon a solicitor unless the disagreement concerns a contract." She laughed then, softly, but without restraint. Lady Doring looked over her shoulder. An excellent rule. Frederick's expression warmed, but he did not touch the ring. "Elspeth, will you marry me?" Once, she had imagined love from a powerful man as rescue. Now she understood it differently. It was being seen without being reduced, being cherished without being possessed, and being asked without being cornered by gratitude. "Yes," she said, "I will." Mr. Pembroke sent the settlement to Elspeth's own solicitor before any wedding date was fixed. Clauses were questioned, amended, and signed. Frederick surrendered the rights Victorian marriage might otherwise have placed in his hands. Only then did they announce the engagement. Their wedding took place quietly in December at the parish church near Lady Doring's house. Mr. Pembroke served as Frederick's witness. Mr. Broom attended with his wife. Mrs. Rook came from Richmond and wept openly when Elspeth signed the register. Elspeth entered as Miss Wycliffe and left as the Duchess of Kestrelmere. But the brass plate above her workshop door did not change. Neither did the name beneath her professional reports. The following spring, the Society of Antiquaries opened a public exhibition on false provenance and responsible restoration. The two counterfeit pendants lay beneath separate glass cases. Nearby stood the blue Morocco case, a facsimile of the payment memorandum from the CM, writing case, William's tracing plate, the corrected Kestrelmere record, and the full account of the Mercer fraud. The genuine sapphire remained unset beneath its own case. Its label did not describe perfection. It described removal marks, disputed ownership, deliberate deception, and the work of William Wycliffe, whose records made recovery possible. After the guests departed, Elspeth remained before the final case until Frederick joined her. He stopped beside her without speaking. She opened the cracked leather case and lifted her father's loupe. For a moment, she looked through it at the sapphire. Then, she turned the small brass lens toward Frederick. His face narrowed within the circle. Not perfected, not protected by title, simply known. "What do you see?" he asked. Elspeth lowered the loop and slipped her hand into his. "Something genuine," she said.